All right. So today I wanted to reflect back several years now. At least I think it's several years. I could be mistaken. Let me see if there is indeed a timestamp for when I wrote this. Yeah, so Craze wrote their first response to public criticism on May 30th of 2019. So we're looking at almost the 3-year anniversary we just passed when this response was written, which has been seen no less than 7,900 times. So 7,900 times that this has been said, that this was written and posted. Now, let me first explain what we will be doing tonight and what we will not be doing tonight. Tonight I will simply be sharing factual information, the information I was able to compile and put together in this writing that I had posted 3 years ago. And I will reflect on it, maybe share some additional information, comment upon it as I go along. And what tonight is not going to be about is that I will not be mentioning anybody's name. I will be charitable and not shine light on any particular individuals. So I will speak vaguely on those issues. I firmly believe that all of the messages that was sent to me several years ago that told me that I should kill myself and that I don't belong in speedrunning and that I'm a hateful person, a bigot. I will allow all that stuff to just remain in the past, and I will not be mentioning those people's names, right? I do think that people who have acted out in this context know who they are, and hopefully 3 years worth of reflection, having the opportunity to think through what took place, and be able to reason through it with fresh eyes, not being driven by emotion, may find that all of the stuff be where it was. Hello, welcome in. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not on social media anymore. I've come to accept the fact that social media can be incredibly unhealthy and toxic. It's not a fair representation of reality. It does allow people to reach other people who they may otherwise not be able to reach, but it can create echo chambers, a lot of hearing what people want to hear and reinforcing that. And I recognize that people's ability to engage in rational conversation has broken down to both sides just hurling comments back and forth at each other, just talking at each other. Certainly in my experience on Twitter especially, with the retro craze stuff did not help at all. You know, it did not help at all because what precipitated the problem, which I'll get into here, is that the way in which a private conversation I had with one individual was misrepresented on Twitter, and it became a kind of a lightning rod for people to begin hating on me. And it wasn't in full context either. And most of the time, people don't take the time to really read comments, and even if they, not just comments, but you know, like I took several weeks, right? I took a long time processing everything, and so there had been a question as to why did I take so long. Well, the thing is right or wrong, I wanted to reflect on it, but the nature of Twitter is everybody have the conversation now, and everybody's driven like almost compulsively to read, to tweet, to read, to tweet, to read, tweet, and those who actively engage in it the most are the most visible. So it's kind of like the loudest sounds. Hey, welcome in. I appreciate it very much. I won't be using names in the video. Right. Very, very much appreciated. Welcome in this evening. But for those who are not familiar, is Twitch partners have an opportunity to create a team. Basically, it's you come up with a team name. Twitch creates a team page where if everybody who's actively on that team, right, you can send invites to people, and then when you go to their stream on desktop version, not I don't believe you can see it on mobile version, but you can see a team that someone might participate on. They can click on the team name, it'll take it to the team page, and it'll have a list of everybody who's on the page and it'll show who's live, right? Well, I think if somebody's doing reruns, it still shows them as live, which was problematic in the past and led to another conflict. But so Retro Craze was a team I created because I recognized a lot of people weren't on teams. I knew a lot of people were on Best of NES. That was a pretty big team, and I was a part of that for a very long time. But I also recognized that as part of Best of NES, I wasn't able to send invites to other people who weren't on teams. So just to give you an idea of how this worked, like within just a couple months, the team went from me creating it as a Twitch partner to like 150 people. It got really big really fast, and the problem is that it grew faster than my ability to really keep up with it. So that in of itself caused issues because the policies of what the team was going to be went through development, but the team was growing really fast, and so some people got more updated policies than others, and so I used Discord to try to mitigate the loss of communication. And having looked at other teams in the past, like Speedrunners Keeping It Real PG, I've used this as an example several times, even though people for some reason can't get my point. The criteria for that particular team was that they weren't going to be M for mature, right? They were going to keep it, the chat, the commentary, the conversations and such, PG. And if a person moved beyond that and they started wanting to tell more adultish jokes and have more R-rated content and everything, then they would be asked. I think a conversation would occur first, but they would be asked to either to comply, or they wouldn't be able to have the be on the team and represent the team and everything else. Just on the basis of criteria alone, keeping that set. Now, a few things that Twitch itself going through its own developments over the years. Like, it used to be that if you streamed non-gaming content, you would be suspended. In fact, I have a friend who, at the time, as a joke, I guess, was streaming him shoveling snow, and he was suspended for 3 days. I thought it was hilarious. But Twitch began to expand to non-gaming content, and even how it does its tags has grown. In fact, what we see today with tags is a natural consequence to tags that they made for exceptions. So it used to be that most of the tags, and this is Twitch's own language, that the tags were supposed to explain the activity that was taking place on the stream. So painting, drawing, like music, speed running, first playthrough, things like that. It had to do with the activity, and they had to be objective too. So you couldn't have funny, for example, as a tag, because that's subjective. It has to be the activity that is taking place with the streamer. The problem is then they moved into, and this brings us to the conflict that ended up occurring between my team, which was positioned for a gaming only environment. The idea is that people, whether you were a progressive or a conservative, whether you were more libertarian or you were religious or non-religious, which I don't like using those terms because it's all philosophy, no matter what your intellectual commitments were on politics, philosophy, and the such, that the one thing that we did share among among ourselves was this shared passion, this common interest that we call gaming. And I've seen people engage in gaming commentary, analyze gaming code, participate in speedrun marathons, coming from all different walks of life, different nationalities, different cultures. And we were able to just enjoy the video games. And so I saw the benefit of an environment that focused exclusively on gaming. Now, this wasn't to say that streamers on the team couldn't have their own private discussions on their channels or anything like that. It just meant that the kind of model was those types of streams that predominantly focused on a gaming commentary, right? So gaming tags, stream titles, information underneath the stream, nothing that would be but basically to take just a neutral position and just play games, which seems reasonable enough for a lot of people. The problem is that there are those progressives who refuse to allow environments to just be gaming oriented. They cannot have that. They believe that absolutely everything, and we see this with companies as well. Let me just use this as an example, where you have a company that makes mattresses or makes cookies or makes shoes, and their ads aren't about the quality new product that they just made, right? Which is what I would like to see. What's the best shoe coming out? What's the new mattress technology? Rather, it's talking about cultural issues, but that's problematic because there are different ideas about the kind of culture in which we want to live. And this is what makes it political, right? Anything that has to do with the public, what we're teaching in schools, to policies that govern multiple people in small regions. It's all politics. How are we going to get along in public with one another, right? What ordinances are we going to have in a township, so on and so forth. That all of those things end up being points of contention between people who have different ideas about how that ought to work together. But the point is that I had recognized, okay, that when a streamer did not stream to the broadest audience possible, often it ostracized people. It can make people feel uncomfortable. Now, if a gaming-only environment makes somebody uncomfortable because they don't hear their ideas being represented, that's kind of strange. That would be like me going to a stream and they're commenting on the game, and I'm like, why aren't they talking about Roman Catholicism? Why aren't they praying a Hail Mary before they start every gaming attempt on every reset? I'm offended by this. I'm so uncomfortable being here. This is not a safe space for me. It would be really absurd for me to have that kind of expectation that somehow there's something just inherently wrong with an environment that is inclusive precisely because gaming is the central theme and focus of what we're doing. Now, maybe it was novel for some people who were not quite familiar with the types of teams that are out there. How an individual stream would relate to that particular team, like what responsibilities, right? So part of the language that was used in our policy, specifically I would say my policy, that there was an individual who was helping me because I recognized the team was growing very quick. A lot of people were really excited to be part of a team. And I was very excited for them because they were connecting with new people they hadn't talked to before. And I had always, not required, but highly recommended that everybody who was on the team to follow each other and support each other and to get to know one another. All right. So I created a Discord so that people could more easily do that. Hey, welcome in tonight. But what ended up being an issue with one individual is that, and this goes back to Twitch, right? So, hey, welcome in. Greetings. I'm purposely not saying names, just so it's not in the video. That Twitch itself began to open up on the type of content that they were going to have on their platform. So it wasn't going to be just games, right? You can do other things. And I was perfectly fine with Retro Craze having non-gaming content as long as it was gaming related. So if you were painting a picture of Mario, or you were making video game music, or there's all kinds of things that you can do that's gaming related. It's not playing a game. You could show your gaming collection, or go over, or an unboxing, or something like that. That the last 4 gaming purchases you made. You could do all kinds of stuff. You can just do just chatting, but it's about video games. I would have been perfectly fine with any of those things, because at the core, it was the video games themselves. Gaming is gaming. That was the core there. But Twitch, as it opened up with its content, it also moved beyond its initial purpose for tags. And they included the LGBTQAI plus tag, I think it is. And Twitch can create whatever tags they want, and they could do pretty much whatever they want. It's their platform. I get it. I appreciate being able to use this platform. But that did something. That changed the purpose of what tags were for, and what Twitch themselves said that tags were for. And even that created divisions. There were people who said that allies shouldn't use it, right? Just people who happen to identify as one of the letters. People would debate among themselves about that particular point, not just among themselves, but on Twitter threads and whatnot. So it instantly became a divisive thing, even as to who gets to use it, how is it being used, why is it being used. And I had pointed out, I actually wrote a lengthy article, which I'm not going to read to you tonight, to Twitch, explaining that in your non-discriminatory article or clause, right? Your non-discriminatory clause in your, I think it's either community guidelines or code of conduct or something like that, that specifically states all of these different characteristics that could not be discriminated against for targeted harassment and so on and so forth. So I turn that and I say, okay, so somebody cannot be discriminated against on the basis of, quote, this is from their own clause, sexual orientation and gender identity. And I pointed out, you have now created a tag that allows some people in that listing to highlight themselves and have excluded the ability for all the other people to highlight themselves. I said this, unfortunately, it creates a discriminatory environment. And I don't know if my article had an impact, but we've seen what has happened with tags since then. We now have a Christian tag. We now have tags related to different countries, different different nationalities, so or disabled, mental illness. Now there's tags for absolutely everything on that listing. Like I said, I don't know if my article eventually opened that up, but I specifically reached out to them saying that, hey, if you're going to have that tag, it's appropriate given the non-discriminatory clause that there be other tags. Now, I would have been perfectly happy with Twitch remaining gaming only. If I would have been perfectly fine with tags remaining on the activity that I'm performing, like I'm playing an actual video game, right? And of course, that was my argument, and that's what I wanted to stick with, right? because Twitch was already an environment where people from all kinds of different backgrounds could come out of the fringe and play video games with each other. I mean, it was already an environment where people could, have this interest that they can share with other people. Granted, it's human for us to want to also engage in relationships where we have more in common. And I think people can do that, like in their private messaging and stuff like that. What may be very suitable for a one-on-one conversation between me and one other person who may share more than just gaming, right? May not be a good environment for your Twitch chat in general, where you have people who are coming from different backgrounds and different ideas, right? And so this came to a clash, right? When, as I was developing the policies, as the team was growing, specifically to be gaming only, so that we were only using gaming tags, gaming dialogue in general. I mean, we were in the middle of discussing in the policies of whether or not in the information underneath the stream that the About Me panel could be a little looser and non-gaming related. We were still in the middle of having conversations about to what extent somebody could share more of their political and philosophical commitments and stuff of that nature. But in general, it was to be avoided because it does cause conflicts. 3 stories come to mind. And so while I was working with another individual that was helping me write policy and stuff and come up with the interest page where people can give me their Twitch link and name and stuff like that, why they want to join the team. It was very well done. I liked it. He did a lot of really good work, also in helping me with some background work and putting together the Castlevania speedrun races, which was fun. And while we were composing some of those policies, I think I lost my point, as I was trying to explain too much in one time, which is a problem with this topic. I had shared 3 stories with him. I said, listen, this team, it should be and remain gaming only in its focus, live retro gaming performances, and the gaming content was very, very important to me. I said, okay, so early on in my streaming experience, I forget what I was playing. I may have been playing Ninja Gaiden or Castlevania or something, and at the time I had a viewer who was on my stream every single day. Every single time I streamed, he was always there. I got to know him a little bit, and talking about games. I didn't know much about him personally, but I had another friend that came in. He started talking about, something that happened at church, a conversation he had, and, the conversation kind of went, and we were talking more about Christianity in general. Apparently it made this guy who was at the time one of my only viewers, and he was very uncomfortable. He was just there for the games, and I don't blame him if he's just there for the games. It can be very distracting when you are being confronted with ideas that are not your own. Some people do better with that than others. Some people don't really care. Other people, they feel uncomfortable for one reason or another, whatever that reason might be. And I just and he never came back. he never came back, and I thought to myself, this was early on. I think I had like 50 followers or something. I'm like, I think it would be better if I just played the games, And there were multiple streamers that I liked at the time, and I won't name their names because I don't want names to be mentioned here. That's not what we're doing tonight. I noticed that they only commented on the games. They only talked about maybe what they had for lunch at all. Sometimes they didn't even do that. And there was something about that environment I just really liked. You don't know the politics and the philosophies that the person ponders, thinks about, and acts out in their lives. And I saw wisdom in that, right? I thought that was a really good environment where it was inclusive for everybody. If you liked the game that they were playing, everybody can come and talk about it. I liked that. And sometimes it was the personality of the gamer that may have drove people to it. Sometimes it was the game that was being played, but it was always gaming related. It was always focused on the games, right? So while I was having a conversation with the guy who was helping me with all this, that was one of the stories I shared. I also shared a story of a Twitter post that was made as a result of a private Discord message, right? So person A sends person B a private Discord message sharing their thoughts on a subject. Person B then posts the message publicly on Twitter and basically invite people to ostracize the individual. I looked at that and I thought, why can't people have private Discord conversations with each other? Which brought all kinds of hate and comments against me. That weekend alone, just because I popped into the conversation, I'm like, what's this all about? Well, why can't this person share these thoughts? This is where they are in their thinking at this moment. They might not be there 10 years from now, or they may. But needless to say, they wanted to have they wanted to share thoughts. Most people, if they don't want to engage in thoughts, they just don't respond to it, or they block the person if they keep getting things. I mean, I've had to block people before. And I thought, why is this being posted publicly on Twitter? And I noticed that the way that people were treating other people in gaming because of their thinking on political and philosophical matters was causing conflict. I'm not saying people can't have those conversations. I think people should. Some people can handle those discussions. Some people, they just can't. Some people are more interested in maybe convincing the other person than they are in just, connecting. Sometimes people don't care what you know until they know that you care, about them genuinely. The point of the matter is that was kind of number 2 story I shared. Story number 3 was I was on a stream once. I won't share his name. And he had asked me what my educational background was. And I said, well, I have a degree in theology. Turns out the streamer was an atheist, and they began criticizing me for my choice of education. I felt uncomfortable. I felt attacked. I had plenty of responses to what was being said against me, against my choice of education. But that was strike number 3. I thought, if they just stuck to gaming and just asked me about what game I was playing or something like that, we never would have had that kind of conflict, right? So I guess what it came down to is I kept having negative experiences Um, and what's really interesting is that most of the experiences I've had has been specifically from the progressive wing of politics. Um, Doing or saying something in the gaming environment that was causing conflicts, because in their mind you can't allow people to speak ideas that was different from theirs because they're right. Well, I get that. I think I'm right on stuff too, you know. Um, but yeah, their ideas are based on reality, and but you know, I think my ideas are based on reality too. You, you know, um, I'm just not mean to people about it. You know what I mean? I'm willing to have those conversations. Even if I think that their ideas are dangerous and they think my ideas are dangerous. Well, let's talk about that. Why can't we talk about that? But I just recognize that conservative ideas, all right, or ideas, hey, welcome in, ideas based on like religious conflict I just recognized it was causing too many problems. So I said, okay, these are the three stories I wanted to share with you. This is why the policy needs to be developed further to include more language to address trying to mitigate this stuff from happening, right? So picture this. So here I am specifically creating a gaming only culture because of conflicts of conservatives being stifled and progressive values being militantly and actively being pushed. I said, let's just play video games. Right? That's basically what I said. And that's what created the issue. So one particular individual was streaming the LGBTQI plus tag. It was a non-gaming tag. It could have been an AMA tag. It could have been any tag that was non-gaming related, and or related to the activity that they were doing that was gaming related, like drawing and things like that. Right? It was simply just a non-related gaming tag. So I basically reach out to the individual, share the policy, share the expectation. We're just going to do the gaming stuff. And I think a couple months passed by before my message was screenshotted and put on Twitter. Now, what had happened is that this individual responded to my message, and I have all the quotations. I'll go over them. Asked not to be contacted again. I respected that. I did not respond to the message. A couple months later, the Retro Craze team was now 150 people. The Castlevania race was had like 13 people who were already signed up for it, and all of a sudden, a screenshot of my message to this person showed up on Twitter, stating that I removed them from the team because they identified themselves as LGBTQIA+. Did not include their response, asking me not to reply. Did not include their response that they no longer wanted to have anything to do with me or the team. Portrayed it as if I was the one that was actively kicking them off the team, despite the fact I said very clearly that, all right, this is the policy, we can talk about it, think about it, let me know what your thoughts are. That's a paraphrase. I'm going to quote what I sent. But as you can imagine, Twitter is Twitter. And if there is something like this out there, what happens is all the progressives go, they go straight to it. It blows up with likes and retweets and everything else. And it basically just circulates within these progressive pockets, or these bubbles within Twitter. I'm going to guess that many conservatives may not concern themselves with video games very much. All right, there seems to be very few conservatives, or at the very least, there are many libertarians who, okay, we're just gonna be hands off, right? And what ended up happening is I was demonized, horribly demonized. Now, call me what you want, say what you want. All right, just if it is if it is charitable to do so, but if it's not, then people should generally just remain quiet and the such. Underneath all of this is my own politics and philosophy. I can't be, as a Roman Catholic, I cannot be involved in certain aspects that are floating around in our culture. I just can't be involved in it. And a gaming only environment would have been perfect for me, as it would have been perfect just for, people in general, because we could just all come together and play video games. Most of the people who followed me were progressives. Most of the people who followed me were allies of the LGBTQAI plus tag. And I didn't treat anybody differently. There was a gamer who said that they were gay. And they even had it in their information. I still showed up to the stream. I still spoke with him. I bought him an EverDrive because he needed it. And I was charitable, right? I also was subscribed to a few people on Twitch who self-identified as transgender. Well, that's not the way that I think. I was there to support their gaming on their channel, right? And despite the fact that I was willing to be friends with these people, I was willing to be in the channels with the atheists playing their video games, be in the channels with the self-identified transgenders with in their gaming, make donations to people and support their gaming as gaming. And it was very sad for me when, as soon as they found out that I was a Roman Catholic and that I couldn't support some of their political and philosophical commitments, that I had created a gaming team that was supposed to be just about games. We weren't going to use non-gaming tags or anything like that. Just try to stick to the games. All of it got the rhetoric that was used, the narrative that had circulated. I was completely demonized, and so even people who even liked me, they saw what had happened and they didn't want a target put on their back, so they decided that they didn't want to be my friend either. And this did one thing for me that was really good. It did wonders for me. I actually knew who my friends were, And not only that, I knew exactly those people whom I could share more of myself with. And that has been very enriching. I kind of get wanting to share more of oneself and have camaraderie with others beyond gaming. I get that. That's actually how I run my channel now. I'm just unabashedly myself. I'm open about all of my politics and philosophy, but I'm very respectful, because I know that there's a distinction in being able to treat a person with human dignity without dignifying people's undignifiable ideas, philosophy, and politics. So I have always been able to give and treat a person with dignity without violating my own principles, right? It's amazing being able to connect with people on social media, mainly because I don't go to places. Some people might not go to other places, so I can jump online and instantly be talking to friends. All right, I've given a really long background, so this is in Q&A format. I'm going to be reading. Right, I'm going to be reading, but I'm going to be talking about it, and so we might be down here for another hour and a half or so. But I think what ended up happening is that there are. I look at the world and I see intellectual diversity. I do, for good or for ill. There are good ideas, there are bad ideas. I see that. And at the core, you have an individual reasoning person who, like everybody else, wants to figure it all out. And at the present moment have certain ideas about it all. 10 years from now, they may have the opposite ideas. Or 10 years from now, they may have more refined ideas about what they had thought 10 years ago. I think that the point through the process is not to be arrogant or self-centered or self-absorbed in all of it, but while having conversations, if one finds merit in the argument that another person's setting forth, you can learn something from it, and you don't have to accept everything that's being said. There could be a measure of truth in there, something that you could be more fair to and more charitable with in one's own reasoning. What is considered undignifiable? Certainly. Well, as a Roman Catholic, I don't think people have a right to heresy. I don't think people have a right to depravity. I think one of the best ways of looking at an angel is, if you have a moral system and you look at the world and you see some things as vice and other things as virtue, so those things that are undignifiable would be vice, and things that would be dignifiable would be the virtue. Obviously, from a Catholic perspective, I'm a theist, so I see God as the ground of morality. That conversation kind of moves away from my purpose tonight, but hopefully that answers your question to some extent, that just because, Angel, I respect you as a person, created in the image and likeness of God, having reason and intellect, will, so on and so forth, I can treat you with respect. But that doesn't mean that I agree with all your ideas. That doesn't mean I support all of your life choices. That doesn't mean that I can support everything that you choose to do in your life. Things that I think might actually be harmful for you, right? By stoning. Why would I talk about stoning in our particular culture in the New Testament dispensation? Well, anyways, we don't need to go into God commanding people in the Old Testament to be the instrumental cause of justice. We don't have to go into that. Yeah. No, we don't have to go into that because it's a distraction from what we're doing here. But my point is that there is morality, and we look at each other through the lens of our own morality. We do this. All right. So, all right. So the first question to address here is, how long was this particular individual on the team? I certainly wanted to talk about that. I said approximately 2 to 3 months. So this individual that I had this conflict with was on the team for 2 or 3 months. The team was actually created on January 17th of 2019, and I sent an invite to this person the following day. All right. So very, very, very early on. So the team member... so the team member only Discord wasn't created until the 28th. All right, so there was a 10-day period where I was inviting people to the team, and there wasn't a Discord yet that had all of our policies listed, nor was there an invite page where people could fill out their information that talked a little bit about the team before they said, yes, you can go ahead and do that, join the team, and why. So I would say I sent the invite on January 18th. And was on the team until like April 6th. So yeah, I would say about 2 or 3 months, right? I sent the invite for the Discord server on the 28th. I don't know if it was accepted, but this person was on the team definitely through February and March, right? The next question I wanted to address is, were the rules for the team developed and explained to the team? This is very important. So the interest form wasn't created until March 25th. All right, March 21st was March 25th. March 25th, and the facts channel in the team only Discord wasn't created until March 28th. So it was the facts channel that had some of these policies in it. That was on March 28th. And so we're looking at a good 40 days, I think. Yeah, I would say about a good 40 days after. I get this. And I clearly stated this 3 years ago, that the team was growing rapidly, and I was trying to catch up. It's not like I designed everything and then launched it, full. I didn't even know people were going to join the team, right? So yeah, I created that. So this was about 5 weeks after the team was created. So myself and an admin thought it was important that we craft the rules around the interests. Around the intents that I had while evaluating the prospective team members. In other words, to make explicit to the team and possible team members their criteria I was already using in my assessment of streams. When I evaluated this individual stream, I don't recall recognizing any non-gaming related elements. I don't. Uh, I just don't. Okay. I try to do my best, and so there's that. Oh, that's fine, Angel. That's fine. I mean, there'll be other times for us to hash out, the role of stoning in the Old Testament and all of that stuff. I think your question though had to do with whether or not ideas were dignifiable. Like the distinction I was making, for instance. Let's say you can respect me as a person, without supporting my behaviors, without accepting everything that I do, right? Agree with all of my politics and philosophy. In fact, you might find some of my political or philosophical ideas to be horrendous, right? From your own perspective, those would be undignifiable from your perspective, right? So there's things that are happening in our culture right now that are clearly against the ethics, the morality of the Roman Catholic Church and the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church. And so I can't give to those ideas a kind of support or acceptance or dignity because I find them to be abhorrent. I find them to be very, very bad for people. They are wounding their souls. They are being drawn into vice, and so their intellect is being darkened, and their will is being enslaved in vice. I can't extend dignity to things that are ultimately going to be harmful to another human being. So just that's the distinction that I was making. So we can go into those other things some other time, but hopefully that answers your question about the distinction I was making about how you treat an individual person who's created in the image and likeness of God, but also recognize that there are things in their life that is harmful to them. If you saw a person who was struggling with alcoholism and they're on the brink of alcohol poisoning and destroying their liver, you're not going to be able to give to that behavior a kind of dignity, right? You can't do that, right? So we're going to have to leave it at that so I can move on. So when I was looking at this individual stream, I had recognized at the time, I didn't recognize anything that was a non-gaming related element. It's just for that. All right, so on March 28th, an admin had tagged everyone in the announcement section 6 days before my message to this individual. All right, so you can see the timeline here. All right. So this individual was on the team now for, I would say, 5 weeks? And from what I could see is that 6 days before my message to this individual about them using a non-gaming tag, this is what was stated, this is what was posted in the Discord. New fact page. Whether you are on the team right now or someone expresses interest in joining the team, the Retro Craze Facts channel contains a collection of questions and information that everyone needs to be on the same page for at the time being, whether it's about content, behavior, etc. Right? It was this fact page which I quoted. It was from this fact page that I quoted to this individual at the beginning of my message, which we will get to, right? Hey, welcome in, and thanks for your question. I think in general, I think my point has to focus, really has to focus on the fact that it was to be a gaming environment, that non-gaming tags were not going to be used. So it's really important for people to just recognize that point, black and white, just for what it is. It's just a gaming team using gaming tags, gaming content. That's it. So, no alternative motive, nothing. Just it's just that people either accept that or they can't. Now, for my part, 3 years ago, I said, I apologize to this individual for not being thorough enough in my evaluation of their channel and for not taking the time, at bare minimum, to craft a starting criteria that would make explicit to all the prospective team members at the time the team was created. That was apology number one. All right. I also apologize that I assumed that everybody in the Discord could see the policies and understand how they applied if they had been seen. Okay. Now, after the worldview conflicts I witnessed on Twitter back in December of 2018, I was convinced that any team I created focused on retro gaming would be focused on gaming-related matters only. And I apologize that my intent was not made explicit. I also apologize, you see, listen to all these apologies that I have, for growing the team too quickly without having first given ample time for all the initial members to acclimate to the team rules, which I should have also made clear. Like I said, I wasn't expecting the team to explode. All right, it got really big, really fast. Right. Well, to answer your question, it didn't manifest itself on Twitch. I have conversations about the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church. I have conversations about politics and philosophy in general. Understand what is being said and don't try to fish for what I'm not saying. My intent was clear in creating Retro Craze. It was to be a gaming only team. That's it. What I was talking about and making a distinction about dignity, I was talking in general about having conversations with people in general. Whether it was having conversations with people in private or in public. So I set forth a lot of these apologies, right? Because the team had grown so fast. I wasn't prepared for it. So all my apologies there for all of that and how that contributed to everything that took place. I said this 3 years ago. Nobody cared about my apologies. My apology also goes for the non-live policy, which also upset at least one other former team member. While it is true that members could uncheck a box to not host reruns during team auto hosts, there was no way that I could keep the team page itself free from non-live content if a team member engaged in non-live content. This was me also apologizing to another conflict that occurred that was unrelated, right? Yeah, so I made a gaming team. I told people to keep their tags gaming related. Some people didn't, and I did not remove them. I initiated a conversation with them, and I did get a lot of hate. Yes, yeah. So that's basically how that goes. So basically, I was called an anti-LGBT um, bigot and all of that stuff. I just wanted to talk to people about video games. The lie was that I removed. Okay, in fact, this lie spread so much. I had visited another person's stream, right? And after a gaming performance they did, they told all of their viewers that I kicked off a member of the Retro Craze team because they were gay. The ironic thing is that before that person said that, I didn't even know that the person was gay. Nor was that a factor in whether or not they were invited to the team. So lies began to spread because it served the narrative, But the team was really chill. So I mean, it was a straw man. There wasn't anything I could do. The narrative was spreading so fast, and I took like 2 weeks before even responding to it. So whatever narrative people wanted to solidify became solidified to the point where even when I told people what my intent was, they would believe what other people were telling them about me, to the point where everything I was saying was a lie. From their perspective, everything I was saying was a lie. They could not hear me talk about exactly what I did, why I did it. And I took 2 weeks to think about what I wanted to apologize for, what I wanted to take credit for, and what I wanted to address in what was out there. Yeah, I don't doubt that it was a sensitive topic. It just is. Um, and looking back, and I'll get to the actual message that I sent. When I had to address a second non-gaming tag issue, I rewrote it. Right? I didn't do a copy and paste. I tried to approach it in a much more sensitive manner. I did. And that individual said, "Oh, I completely understand. This is your team. You want just the non-gaming related tags, and or just the gaming related tags." And okay, yeah, and we remained friends. In fact, I ended up donating like $400 to a cause that he was fundraising for, even after that. Just because he was so charitable in his response towards me concerning the matter. Well, like I said, I had just created the Twitch team, and then the person was invited 2 days later, and very slowly, right, very slowly did, as I shared, it took about a month to, I would say, a month to 5 weeks before some of the policies began to I kind of solidify. It was growing way too fast. Like I said, and I'm gonna say this again too, because I have so much content to cover factually. I don't want to get lost in the weeds, And if it actually helps for me to actually remove the word discussion so I can cover some of this. I get it, yeah. Yeah, so it was a fresh team. It was just taking off. Yes, like I said, it was probably a shock to this individual. And I totally get that. So I want to go back and read my apologies again. All right. On how all of this was framed. So I said, for my part, all right, I want to own something here. I did this 3 years ago. This is what I wrote 3 years ago. I still stand by all of it. I apologize to this individual for not being thorough enough in my evaluation of their channel initially, and for not taking the time at bare minimum to craft a starting criteria that would make explicit to all the prospective team members at the time the team was created. I apologize for that. I wasn't expecting the team to grow as fast as it did, and I was trying to play catch up. I also apologize that I assumed that everyone in the Discord wasn't created till the following month, because it was so big. We needed a Discord now, right? Yeah. I also apologize that I assumed that everyone that was in the Discord could see the policies and understand how they applied, like when the policies were posted in there. So after the worldview conflicts that I witnessed on Twitter back in December 2018, that was part of that story that I shared, that I ended up engaging in. I was convinced that any team I created focused on retro gaming would be focused on gaming related matters only. Right? This is our shared passion. This is our common interest, right? Let's if we want to have the political and philosophical conversations that circulate our culture today, that creates a lot of conflict, right? That creates a lot of conflict among people. Let's set that aside so that we can figure out the new speedrunning strategy for Donkey Kong, Wait a minute. Don't put words in my mouth, Angel. When I was talking about dignity and undignified beliefs, I wasn't talking in the context of this conversation. I was simply addressing that I have the ability to respect a person as a person, right? Who has an intellect, who has a will, right? Who has inherent dignity. But not everything a person does, thinks, is inherently dignifiable. All right? Quit drawing that into this conversation. All right? Or I will ban you. What I think about other people's philosophy and politics has nothing to do with this conversation. I wanted all of politics and philosophy not to be a source of contention among people who were supposed to come together on the basis of gaming and enjoy gaming. I'm not annoyed at people not accepting my apology. I will put it out there and people will do with it whatever they want. I was trying to set up the team and the people streaming to the broadest audience as possible, to focus on the gaming commentary, all of that stuff. If somebody didn't want to be part of that team, they didn't have to be. Nobody has to be part of Retro Craze. Nobody does. That's what we wanted to focus on. Well, that's fine, Angel. We don't have to discuss moral authority. We don't have to discuss morality in general. That's not the point. The point is that no matter what your morality is, no matter what your thoughts about reality are, no matter what your philosophical commitments or your political positions, we could all be part of the team and play video games together, right? No, the point at the very beginning, I said, what I will be doing tonight is to going over some of the factual information, giving dates and stuff like that. I don't want to be distracted too much when I'm giving some of that detailed information, because people watching this video will be distracted by content that is not focused on what I am presenting and wanting to discuss. This has nothing to do with the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church. This has nothing to do with your moral positions. All right? We can have those discussions some other time. All right? There is a point to be made here. That's fine, Angel. I get it. You want to understand. I get it. So don't get so hung up on the dignity and dignifying undignifiable things. That distinction. All right, don't be distracted by that right now. We can talk about that tomorrow or the next day. I mean, it's possible you weren't here at the very beginning of the stream and how I premised what I was doing tonight. I get that. But I also don't want you to leave here feeling like I didn't talk to you at all, or that I'm not willing to have a conversation. That's not the point. The point is that I wanted to be able to give a very succinct, detailed explanation of a timeline, and try to keep those quotations close enough together so that when people, consume this content, that they have that timeline. And it's not in bits and pieces strung across 40 minutes. But anyways, so I apologized for all of this stuff, right? So at the time this person joined the team, neither the interest form nor the facts section of the team Discord existed. And that's why I had to apologize for those things. I get it. I was helped with those aspects 5 weeks later by another admin who saw I needed help filling in some of the gaps because the team was exploding. Right. So the team page originally introduced the team as this. So once the team page was up and running, and I don't remember when the interest form was created. All right, so this person, I created the team January 18th, 17th. This person joined on the 18th. They were on the team for 2 to 3 months. On March 25th, the interest form was created. The Discord was created on March 28th, and looks like March 28th was when the new fact page was posted in the Discord, which reflected what was on the interest page. And this is the original version. Whether it's arcade, PC, or console, whether casual or speedrun, old school or retro style modern games, we love to play retro games. This team was created as a way of helping smaller retro streamers grow together and support each other. At the time the interest form was created, I included an additional description of the team to explain my criteria, and this was on March 25th. This was the addition then. The Retro Craze team is a group of people dedicated to live retro gaming content whose members who generally utilize Twitch for the exclusive purpose of retro gaming related material. Right. That was March 25th. All right, so that was before everybody was tagged in the Discord, and that was yet 6 days before I messaged this individual, just to kind of give a timeline for that. So retro, live only, and gaming related elements only, right, is basically what was being set forth here. So what was the message that I sent to this individual? Quote, "For your convenience, I am pasting the behavioral expectations that can be found on the Discord. Albeit a sensitive subject to many, I think it's important to set the expectations of behavior right away as we continue to grow as a team. We all want to be on the same page on this. We like to use the phrase, be the lighter version of yourself. We encourage that you be who you are. After all, that's what got you here in the first place. That is, people who like games, I'll say parenthetically. But we also want you to be mindful that you will be presenting yourself and your content to a wider variety audience, and we want to ensure that everyone feels welcomed and respected. We strongly discourage controversial or sensitive subjects such as politics, religion, and many more. We all just want to share our mutual passion, video games. Liquids, foods, and smoking are also permitted on streams with reasonable consumption." I continue. "I like to encourage all team members to use Twitch exclusively for the use of gaming and to only have game-related content on their stream. Non-gaming purposes such as the use of the LGBT tag or promoting another streamer and describing them specifically as, quote, trans, political, variety streamer, unquote, give people the impression that you are using Twitch for more than just gaming purposes. I have seen controversy, and I have seen extremely sensitive issues like this ruin friendships and cause great harm and division on Twitch. I am sure you have great intentions for wanting to try and make everyone comfortable, but I can assure you there are people on the other side who feel uncomfortable when they see this tag, and it can turn people off from your stream. Per the expectations, it is important for all elements of your stream to be and remain exclusively game-related. If for some reason you wish to use Twitch for non-gaming purposes, then there might be some other teams out there who don't mind the non-gaming stuff. Let me know. No worries, no rush, no hard feelings either way. Whichever you decide is best for you and your stream." End quote. That's the entirety of my message, and that's what was posted. Well, the point of it was to try to be as professional about it as possible, right? No, I did not ban face cams, and that was one of the things that people were wondering. You have to understand the way in which it was, how retro gaming was categorized. You could be drawing Mario, You could be doing a painting that's gaming related, creating video game music, right? Retro video game music, the style, right? You could be doing an unboxing of your gaming collection. It didn't have to be the game being actively played. So the gaming related content meant it had to do with the individual playing the game. So using a cam was actually very important because, especially for verification purposes, you can see their inputs on their hands. Some people even have two cams, one on their hand where you can see the inputs, right? And another was so that you could see real time expression, like somebody like trying to really focus on an input or something. You can see the facial expression, you can see the focus, you can see how they're interfacing with the game, right? So it was actually encouraged for people to have a face cam because of how it relates to them playing the video game, right? In the context of playing the game, it was especially important for like people doing art or deboxing or gaming commentary, things like that. So it was something that was very, very much encouraged. So what a person looked like had no bearing. That those conversations never took place as part of the policies. If that makes sense. So hopefully that makes sense. Right. I find that to be related to the gaming, the game, the line between what is not retro related seemed very nebulous. Well, that's another aspect of all of this. Oh yeah, yes. So the question was, did this person respond to my message? No. Their message was not included in the Discord snapshot that they posted on Twitter. Okay. They said, quote, "Yeah, that's not going to fly with me. I will use my channel to promote the content that I enjoy, whether or not someone finds it controversial. My identity nor anyone else's is a controversial topic to anyone but bigots. I'm incredibly embarrassed to have been affiliated with you in this team. Do not contact me again." End quote. That wasn't included. Had this individual included that, they wouldn't have been able to spin the narrative that I kicked them off the team. Because if you remember, I basically said, let me know what you decide, right? Now, because everyone was tagged in the Discord for the new fact page, for this individual's convenience, for the purpose of my message, I posted the criteria as it was written, right? So if my approach seemed very HR-ish at the very beginning, it was because it was a copy and paste, right? Just for convenience of this is what was posted in the Discord. And, I posted that first as a premise to how I wanted to talk to them directly, right? And I made sure to apply the criteria to the present situation. So I basically said, per the expectations, it's important for all elements of your stream to be and remain exclusively gaming related. So I made sure to leave the door open for this person to let me know what they decide or any thoughts that they may have, right? They can talk to me if they want. Maybe they disagree with the policy. Maybe they think the policy should be different and will want to try to affect that change. But it was shut down really quick, and I respected, right? I respected. Yeah. I mean, I get that people, all right, so this was another aspect. Some people didn't understand the relationship of a person with a team. And so some people are like, well, how can you tell other people what to do about with their stream? They don't have to be on Retro Craze. They don't have to comply with a gaming only environment. They don't have to. So instead, people were demanding then that my team be what they wanted it to be, so they could use it as a platform for their non-gaming agendas, or use it for whatever other purpose or reason that they want. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. We're just here to play video games. And I think that's fair enough. I mean, I really don't know what this person's understanding of what I was trying to get at. I don't know, because I didn't get much back from them. And it wasn't a conversation that they wanted to have. Oh no, people could have their own Discords and they could do whatever they want with their Discords. It was just on Twitch, because when you're on a team, okay, and you're on Twitch, you can't see this on mobile. I don't think it's visible on mobile, but on desktop, you'll actually see a link. It'll say like Retro Craze, and it'll be a hyperlink, right? So everything that they do on Twitch with their channel, all of the elements, what's being actively streamed, what's being discussed, the information they put in the panels, tags they use, stream title, all of that stuff, then became a reflection of the team, because that name was associated with their stream. Like I said, they didn't have to be on the team, but if somebody wanted to have their Discord, their own Twitter, I'm not going to tell them where they can move and where they bank, and it never had anything to do with those things. But it did have to do with things that were related to gaming. Now, what's interesting about the comment you made before about, well, can they have a face cam? It may not have been explained. Right, exactly, and they weren't Twitch. So whether it was Discord or Twitter, it didn't matter. People can do whatever they wanted on their Discord and Twitter. It wouldn't make any difference to me, unless they evoked the name and shared links, and then it's just like any other. Like if you work for a company and you start using their name in the public space, you have to understand that's not good, right? So yeah, it ended up having to be this issue where it was basically just for Twitch, and people didn't have to be part of the team if they didn't want to be, right? And nobody was being singled out, because everybody could be there. I wanted this individual on the team. Right? They got an invite. They accepted it. They engaged with other people, I think I recall. And it seemed to be good for everyone. So I shall continue. So I initiated contact with this individual to help explain our non-gaming related element policy. I remained open to further discussion and any suggestions or concerns this individual may have during their decision process. I invited their thoughts to let me know and gave them all the time they needed to consider their thoughts and share their feelings with me. No rush. When I was told that they were incredibly embarrassed to have been affiliated with me and this team, I understood this to mean that this person decided to no longer be part of the team. And at that point, they were officially no longer part of the team. Officially. I also respected their request to not contact them again. So I did not continue the conversation as I had hoped. So it's important to clarify that it was this person who no longer wished to be part of the team and no longer wished to be in contact regarding the matter. Importantly, it was only after this message of non-interest that this individual had officially severed ties with Retro Craze and therefore officially ceased to be a member thereof. Right. Did the non-gaming policy go through any development? Yes. The Retro Craze team is described as, quote, a group of people dedicated to live retro gaming content with members who generally utilize Twitch for the exclusive purpose of retro gaming related material. And to go back to the point about the face cam again, because I think I lost my thought. One of the things that's understood with speedrun gaming verification, that it's always encouraged for a person to have their webcam on, and for all the reasons that I gave. But I didn't just give those reasons, but explain that those reasons also are couched within verifying legitimate gaming performances, and as much credence or credibility one can give to their performance was very important for the verification of authentic gaming performances. So very much encouraged in gaming for those who compete to have videos of themselves, right? For all the reasons I gave. So as the team grew and developed, it was necessary to be more explicit concerning who we are, what is our identity. So as the creator of the team and as time progressed, the implicit intentions of the team were made more explicit and clarified. So it went through some development, as I explained with the timeline. Things happened really quick. After having an internal discussion between admins, I modified the behavioral expectations. So originally, it stated, we strongly discourage controversial or sensitive subjects such as politics, religion, and many more. This was part of the quotation that was shared with this individual. I altered that, I updated it, and said, after this conversation I had with this individual, developing it, we strongly encourage everyone to avoid controversial issues, sensitive subjects, or any non-gaming elements such as politics, religions, worldviews, etc. So after receiving the do not contact me again response, I wanted to make sure that I added further clarification that we wish to avoid any non-gaming elements. Back in December, there was another incident on Twitter. This is the one I was talking about. That opened my eyes to how people can act and speak hatefully against others who do not share the same worldview. While I appealed for us to responsibly critique ideas while radically loving people, right? Responsibly critiquing ideas while radically loving people. Yeah, I'll explain worldviews. It's in this letter. One really good book to answer that question was written by James Sire, entitled "The Universe Next Door," and he goes over all of these different philosophical, commitments that people can have of naturalism, right? That ultimate reality consists merely of matter, motion, space, and time, or and the guy who lives next door to you, he's a theist, right? The guy next to that is a pantheist. The guy across the street is a Mormon, and then you have somebody in the New Age a block over, and then you have an agnostic who is undecided on issues, and all of it are people's attempt to grapple with the meaning of reality. But that's my point. That is my point. My point is the universe next door. The way that my neighbor views all of reality can be radically different than my own. But let me get to my point. Once again, while I appealed for us to responsibly critique ideas, while radically loving people, I saw how easily hate that was directed towards one person soon became directed towards me and others. Even within the last few days, I've received hate messages, even through the team interest forum. These examples are the very reason why I decided to make all of my gaming related projects to be gaming related only, and it was why I crafted the team's purpose as members who generally utilize Twitch for the exclusive purpose of retro gaming related material. Although the team had not officially agreed upon any clarifications regarding any of our policies, which we shall be doing in the near future, we might as well state something similar to the following. Quote, and this was a proposal. Members of Retro Craze will avoid all non-gaming related elements such as panel information, tags, stream titles, etc., and are to direct conversations on their stream away from controversial issues, sensitive subjects, religions, philosophical systems, social movements, activism, hot topics in our culture, contentious ideas, worldviews, agendas, ideologies, morality, ethics, metaphysics, epistemology, or any other aspect of human thought that is not directly related to retro gaming. There you go. And that's kind of the point, is that as situations arose, everything became more and more explicit. What I just read to you is the third version, right? It is the third version that didn't come out until I wrote this, which was 2 weeks after, about roughly 2 weeks after the post on Twitter, and that was a couple months after I sent the message. So we're looking at a very long timeline here for how things ended up unfolding. Right. At this time, we are still working on rewriting our rules and policies in order to ensure that retro gaming, which is already all-inclusive of everybody, remains as such. The next question. What is a non-gaming related material policy, and why do you use it as a criteria? The non-gaming related material policy describes the type of team we are, and people who are part of it wish to only use Twitch for gaming related purposes. We do not wish to include any elements on our streams that are not gaming related, whether on stream title, tags, panels, etc. We wish to enjoy the gaming we have come to love and share that passion with other team members in a safe environment where they can be free from any non-gaming related topics that may occur on other streams. We wish to avoid elements that are directly related to sensitive issues, controversial subjects, religions, politics, social movements, activism, ideologies, worldviews, philosophical conflicts, etc. We certainly desire to avoid topics of morality, ethics, or any contention concerning how a person views themselves and others. That a person is, what they ought to be, the end to which they should be directed, etc., are questions that everyone must answer for themselves, but such topics are not gaming related. Gaming is already all-inclusive and a unifying factor. I see. Okay, so one of the things that ended up happening on Twitter is that people would bring up all kinds of things just like that. All right, so somebody asked, well, what if there is a character in a video game that might be ambiguous, so you have a retro game that has a gun. Okay, so let's say you're playing Duck Hunt, right? Or Hogan's Alley, and you're using the zapper for the NES. I don't see if somebody doesn't want to play that game, they don't have to play that game, all right? But we don't have to squeeze so hard. That's the thing. Some people were claiming that I was trying to control things too much. But really, I was just, hey, let's just play the games. If you don't like somebody playing Hogan's Alley or Duck Hunt or something, then, yeah, I mean, they don't have to do that. Or if you're playing a game like Contra, where you were taking down Red Falcon, and you're using the spread weapon, or you're playing... what's that other one called? Heck, one of my favorite games, Journey to Silius. You're using a weapon and you're shooting it, and you're taking out aliens and stuff like that. Kind of like Contra too. But the thing is that if you're going up against Red Falcon on Contra, and you're using the game, you're playing a retro game. Hey, it's in the game. Retro gaming content only. So if it's in the retro game, then that's something that somebody could do. So now if somebody said, hey, what do you think about maybe all humans should get rid of their weapons, and if we did that, then what if Red Falcon comes and tries to take over everything? We're not going to have the spread weapon to take out the big twitchy heart at the end with the weird alien things coming out of pods like from the Alien movies. Right. So that was one of the things that was of concern is, okay, well, can we have a list of approved, like, what is a gaming related tag, Well, actually, when it comes to politics, I think the most broader way of looking at it typically is how the term is understood. So you have politics, which comes from what? Polis, city, how people live together, right? And so the policies that are molded and shaped on how we interact with each other in public, I think is usually what people think in terms of politics. If you're playing Contra on the NES, or you're playing Donkey Kong 64 on Nintendo 64, and you pick up one of these weapons to take out a chipmunk or something. It's in the game. You're just playing a video game. Here's the thing: if somebody had a question, they can just ask. How about that? So you can ask a million questions, and that's all well and good. If somebody has a question, they could just ask. But generally, if it's in the game, if you don't have to ask me, hey, there's a gun in Contra. Can we play Contra? It's a retro game. Play. Quit asking me questions. All right. If you think something's vague, people can just ask questions. And we can have a conversation about it. So why using the term worldview? And what do you mean by it? So this might help. Well, that's perfectly fine for them to be taking out Red Falcon. It's very possible somebody might take issue with Contra. But our policies were pretty clear. It's a retro game, so deal with it. It's in the retro game. If you want to hyper analyze a list of games that are approved because you have people who say these games shouldn't be played because they have guns, and others are like, well, how can you not have those games that have guns because they're retro games? Yeah, it's I think it's much simpler than what you're trying to make it out to be. Like I said, it's if it's in the game, it's fair game. That could be our new policy. If it's in the game, it's fair game. In terms of playing the game, if you want to try to use the game as a platform to enter into a political dialogue about how we ought to live our lives, how we ought to structure reality, how we ought to conduct ourselves in our culture, you're starting to go beyond just enjoying the game, trying to find out how to glitch through a wall, how to set up a visual cue for the next frame perfect input, how to analyze the gaming code so that we can find out why this death glitch works sometimes and not others. All of those sorts of things are part of retro gaming, right? All of those sorts of experiences. Right? But I think if we were to sit down and craft policy, like where were you? Where were you when I was trying to craft all these policies, right? You could have helped ask all these really cool questions to find out what do you mean by gaming only and what don't you mean by gaming only, right? And be able to answer these questions about, all right, we're just playing retro games, but when does that become political? Because there's stuff in the game, right? And I think I gave you a fair response to that. Right? At some point, you're thinking too much about it. If it's an official release on the NES, play it. Right? If you want to go off on a tangent about how on Bad Dudes, after saving the president, all you get is a freaking hamburger, that's funny. But if you want to go off on some tangent about how labor is undervalued and, start going into economics and this and that, that kind of goes beyond the milieu, right? You can kind of see there's a difference between something being in the game and the game being used as a springboard for a political lecture to which your chat is subjected, right? Older. If you talked about dementia and how to spot it in your parents and grandparents, would you have pulled me up and told me to stop? Now, what about dementia do you think is problematic? That if somebody asked you, like while you were playing a game, what are you presently working on right now? And you're like, oh, I'm writing an article for an academic journal. And the topic is about dementia, and here's 2 or 3 quick things that are relevant to that. And you stop. And you go back to the game, do a few more resets, everything's fine, right? But if your entire stream begins to go down this rabbit hole of DSM-5 criteria and things that could be listed in there, and how certain diagnoses have been politicized by activists in our time, you can see where I'm going with that. And so you're right, it's not retro gaming related. The ideal would be to avoid things that could be as I explained. Now, since this team doesn't exist and won't exist. Oh, I already answered the drinking thing. Um, uh, Reasonable consumption. I mean, if you're passing out on stream and you're becoming so inebriated that you're so inebriated and incapacitated that you can't, you know. I mean, I think that stuff is just clearly against the terms of service right there. But you have to try not to like overly think some of this stuff because a lot of times there are conversations that pop up and then go away quickly that happens to everybody and that's fine. You just have to make sure that things get directed. So that's the language that I used in the most updated was is that conversations would be uh, directed towards um, the game. So it's far better to be talking about the new skip in Mario 64 or to talk about the new ledge skip in Contra, the new route in Zelda, right? That needs to dominate the stream. That was the idea. Was there going to be a comment here and there where the streamer mentioned something? Probably. You know what I mean? Ideally, like I said, everything would be directed towards the game, and try to avoid things that could potentially move into something that could be a sensitive issue or something that relates to, a conflict of some sort. Obviously, a person at some point has to use common sense and personal discretion on after reading the policies about gaming. One can just continue to ask themselves, in the last stream I had, how much time did I actually focus on playing the game? There are people out there, and who they never talk about anything but the game. They're just talking about the game. I won't mention any because I don't want names to be mentioned in this in any of this. But just to make clear that it wasn't meant to restrict people. If a person didn't find that they were a good fit for the team, if they did not already intend for their stream to be gaming only, and then our team wouldn't be a good fit for them. That they can have a team somewhere else. So people who want to join Speedrunners Keeping It Real PG already have streams that are PG. It's not like they join the team, they're like, oh, is this PG or is this PG-13? And spend all your time thinking about that and trying to force the people who made the team try to define, well, what do you really mean by PG? PG and its standards today or 50 years ago, or, you just go over the whole thing. And it becomes, you critique it to a point of absurdity. Where the principle is that the team simply existed for people who were already PG. Right? And more often than not, it's just playing the video game and maybe having some minor side conversations about, I'm going to go offline for an hour. I'm going to come back. I'm going to eat some lunch. I'm going to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and maybe have some lemon water. Right? I mean, come on. Right? But people can ask those questions. All right, so why am I using the term worldview, and what did I mean by it? Okay. Everyone has a worldview. A worldview is built upon the foundation of presuppositions. Presupposition is a proposition which is assumed to be true to say from an infinite regressive proofs, in very broad terms. Though I would probably tweak that simply because I wouldn't say in terms of presuppositionalism, which I think presuppositions play a role in the way we understand and craft thought, but at the same time, I don't hold to presuppositionalism to the point where we can't really know anything. So to say from an infinite regressive proves, as if there isn't anything that can be proved, here is an idea to say from that, and here is my worldview that's built on the basis of it. So I have to adjust that wording there, right? The so-called planting, Elvin planting. Yeah, I'm not a presuppositionalist, but I recognize that there's an element of truth in presuppositions, and that's not to say that they don't play a role in our grounding of our epistemology. It's kind of rough because when I wrote this, I had not yet been fully influenced by Aristotle as much as I am now. So it's going to sound, and I do apologize, a bit postmodern, which had some influences on me and in my mid years. So I have to work on that. It's a retro game, so it is allowed. Because what is a retro game takes precedence. So what you have is a hierarchy of priorities or principles, a hierarchy of principles. So if it is a retro game, you can play it on your stream. Right? If there are political elements within the game, well, it's a retro game. So there's a hierarchy there. If it's not in the game and you're going off on a political rant, don't do that. If it's in the game and instead of just playing the game, you use it as a springboard to enter into a political rant, don't do that. That's my point. It's quite clear to me. But if something isn't clear to somebody, they can ask, hey, is this appropriate for retro craze? Is this okay? And I would have to, on a case-by-case basis, determine what to do with that. But also be careful that an individual case doesn't turn into a general principle that then is taken beyond its specific, to overly generalize a specific. That's not why we're there. Just play the frickin' game. So, since within a syllogism the conclusion is only as certain as its premises, and since at the most basic level all of our worldviews contain a measure of assumption, now I would reject this as a bit postmodern, but I'm willing to grant that to some extent there are certain things that do have to be reasonably assumed, not arbitrarily, but reasonably assumed, right? Due to the nature of presuppositions, we cannot be absolutely certain of our worldview is a flawless representation of reality, although we may reasonably certain to a lesser or greater degree that the construct approximates objective reality. Once again, this is postmodernism. I reject this. Now, okay, I reject this. Yeah. So it's true that in a syllogism that the conclusion is only as certain as its premise. This is true. So if you have a premise that is a little less certain, such as you're not absolutely certain about it, but you're reasonably certain of it, then you can't be absolutely certain about the conclusion. You can just be reasonably certain of it. So this is true in as much as it is. But this idea, though, as I've already rejected because of my Aristotelian epistemology and metaphysics, I reject this form of critiquing of reality down to nothing. This is more of Kant's influence upon me, and I apologize for that. All right, and it made me sick to my stomach when I later came to disagree with precisely how I was conceptualizing this particular point. It reflected more of Kant than it did the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church. That's my bad. I was wrong. All right. So, in general, as adults, but you can see the measure of truth in the pneuma and the phenomena and the modern epistemology, the modern epistemological doubt, right, that had influenced me, and to some degree, those are the sorts of things that have influenced people in our culture, and we just have to deal with it, right? But I think my point was, even if I were simply taking the postmodern intellectual playground as the milieu for the discussion, it doesn't represent my own. In fact, I thought I was appealing to or speaking to, contextualizing what I thought was even the thoughts of others. But it turns out that they think a little bit more like me in terms of certainty. I just think that they're wrong about what they think they're certain about. But in general, as adults, those who have reached the age of abstract thought, there is a reciprocal relationship between objective reality, what a thing is in and of itself, apart from a perceiving mind. This is the realism here, having to do with universals, and the constructs we have formed, either implicitly or explicitly within the mind. And no doubt, there are people who look at reality but end up categorizing things in different ways than another person can. So this is something that actually does constructually happen within the mind, right? So I think that's kind of important to recognize. But at the same, and there is a reciprocal relationship between this, because I think we all want to have reality assert itself upon our mind and ensure that we are actually not getting stuck in an ideology that tries to filter reality through 5 points on a restaurant napkin. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I think that's kind of interesting. So a worldview is a construct through which we have come to interpret our reality. So in general, once again, the universe next door, right? How are we approaching reality? What is our epistemology? What is our ethics? What is our metaphysics? All right? That's basically the three branches of philosophy, okay? In other words, our worldview is the lens through which we interpret. What is that? It's like a fly or something. Is the lens through which we interpret reality, whereas all that which enters the mind, which first existed in the senses, here's me trying to sound like an Aristotelian now, certainly leaves an impression of itself on the mind. These impressions are also filtered through intellectual constructs. So you can see the reciprocal relationship between the interpreter and that which is being interpreted. This is certainly true in as much as it goes. But it's too much for my audience, though. That's the problem. I should have just left the facts and never went into this kind of conversation. But I was hoping to show that we as human beings are on intellectual journeys, are we not? We're constantly reasoning and asking the tough questions about reality and trying to make sense out of it all. Right? And that plays a role in the kinds of conflicts that people have between each other. All right? This is true. Right? Now, worldview confusion and conflict can occur at many different levels and are too often debated without regard to presuppositions. Once again, take that for what it's worth. Is at the level of reasonable certainty that we come to respect the human capacity to reason, because it serves as both a reminder to all of us that we are all in the same journey as human beings wrestling with our reality, and the dignity which is inherent within this process. I use the term worldview because it serves as an all-encompassing concept to address conflict concerning some of the most fundamental questions which we have asked concerning how, who, and what we are, where are we going, and why. Because of the tension that is often created when worldviews clash, either implicitly or explicitly, such are deemed as non-gaming related content or therefore avoided. Makes sense. So, while we all think that our worldview is the most reasonable, we remain tentative in our conclusions because, as finite beings, we are subject to error and are far from being infallible. Now, once again, I'm speaking within that context. I think the church, one of the attributes of the Roman Catholic Church is infallibility, indefectibility, and authority. So they have moral authority and so on and so forth. I would also say that in general, it is reasonable to remain tentative concerning certain types of conclusions, but there are certain things that are certainly not only more certain than others, but go beyond a reasonable certainty to the point where rational demonstration proves the point in hand. While for sanity's sake we are not constantly applying skepticism to our intellectual commitments, because skepticism only has utility in as much as it leads to conviction, right? We can't remain in a state of skepticism, right? The radical criticism of all that exists. We can't always be stuck in uncertainty, all right? And therefore we all tend to interpret all things according to our worldview. We try to make sense out of things. We are also fair to the fact that everyone else is doing the same and yet come to different conclusions at times, and this can cause conflict between people. You can't tell me you've never had conflict with relatives over Thanksgiving meal, right? So how does hate culture relate to worldview conflict? So a worldview conflict occurs when we perceive within the worldview of another an element of incongruity with our own worldview. Incongruities are perceived as apparent flaws in the worldviews of others, and some people may be threatened to a greater or lesser degree by these incongruities. Those who reasonably recognize the role of presuppositions understand that they are not absolutely certain that their own worldviews is an exact representation of objective reality, and therefore maintain their views tentatively, maintaining that their worldview may only be a fair representation which approximates objective reality to a lesser or greater degree. Once again, I'm playing in the field of postmodernism here. I do not adhere to this myself. Like I said, I wrote this not only using postmodernism as the intellectual milieu for how I wanted to frame the conversation initially. It was also prior to me learning more about my own philosophical commitments. So I myself have gone through intellectual development where I've come to find this particular framework to be problematic because it doesn't lead to any kind of conclusion. There's always the skepticism that the thing in my mind actually correlates to the thing outside of the mind. And the problem with that is that this is, for all intents and purposes, a nominalistic notion. All right. But rather, the mind can perceive a thing as it is in of itself, and therefore have rational demonstration, reasonable certainty of grasping the thing. Right. So I think it's I think it's important to note that, for all intents and purposes, postmodernism, some modern philosophies such as Kantian epistemology and stuff, flow from the the early nominalists who were rejecting universals, for instance. So that's interesting. Um, but like I said, I absolutely reject this. Um, yeah, I'm making myself very vulnerable here because, I wrote this, but yet the way I describe it here is not the way I would describe it. And I'm saddened by the fact that, I, they say that sometimes less is more. And it would have been more important for me to just give the facts at the beginning and not try to reason with people from within the context of this intellectual milieu. Right. Uh, when we are honest with ourselves in this regard, we are also more open minded to representations which exist in the minds of others, even if there presently exists incongruities between them. And although this is true from within this framework, I think there certainly are ways of learning things from other people, even if what they're saying is wrong. That, you know, sometimes there's a measure of truth in it, and sometimes it reinforces truth itself because we could see the falsity in the thing that is being presented. A closed-mindedness occurs when a person claims absolute certainty that their worldview is an exact representation of objective reality. When this occurs, and even within Roman Catholic theology, there are things in which we're not 100% sure how the human will and the divine will interact. All right, that there are actual soteriological theories on the precise relationship that is not dogmatized. And theologians are free to explore and consider. Um, so, I mean, yes, there's going to be things that are more certain than others, right? Some things can be demonstrated rationally and proved, like the existence of God, for example. I think the existence of God can be rationally demonstrated, prove that God exists, and many of his attributes. And those who don't generally are falling into philosophies that are less grounded in common sense and just basic reasoning. All right, have a great night. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for all your help recently with the new computer. I appreciate that. So, but this, yeah. So we'll move by that. So, hate culture is made up of closed-minded people who persecute, ridicule, and attack people of worldviews that are not their own. This is true. I can stand by this here now, right? So, in such a person, there is no tolerance for any congruities, and they actively purpose to challenge these incongruities with or without the consent of others. When people are not honest with themselves concerning the nature and function of presuppositions and think themselves absolutely certain, then this is the closed-mindedness that contributes to hate culture and leads to the justification of treating people contrary to the dignity which they inherently deserve. And so, yeah, there is a closed-mindedness. People should be willing to follow reason where reason goes. And so always be willing to engage the mind in difficult topics, especially when it relates to questions of ultimacy. It's very important that we stay in the discussion, that we actively apply our intellect to these things, because ultimately It is our intellect that perceives the good, the true, and the beautiful, and ought to be directed towards its natural end, which is to behold the good, the true, and the beautiful itself, and the beatific vision. So it's very important that that we recognize that there can be incongruities in the way that people are presently thinking about a subject. So it's very important that we have patience, and we're always willing to have open dialogue, a free exchange of ideas. And if you don't want to have a certain conversation with a certain person at a certain time, then don't, right? But normally when things come to a head is when people are actively trying to push something, right? The militant activists pushing and demanding ideological conformity in an environment where the only common interest is gaming, where there's broad intellectual diversity, right? So you can see a conflict is going to occur between the gaming environment that is neutral concerning intellectual diversity, because when the day is done, we have entered into a gaming only milieu. Right? This is the environment where we share this passion. It's like going to a chess club and finding out the latest wrinkle in the Roy Lopez, right? Or what, you never played a game with the Banco Gambit? Or, you know, maybe somebody throws you off on move 10 on the French defense. Just talk about that at the chess club, okay? It isn't necessary for us to try to solve the mysteries of the universe and demand such attention to yourself that, you know, I totally missed the latest novelty in the Queen's Gambit accepted. You know what I'm saying? It's so, but when the gaming environment of neutrality, everybody's welcome. Let's focus on the gaming. We recognize the intellectual diversity, but we're not going to make an issue of it. Comes to clash with a militant activism that demands ideological conformity. What do you think is going to happen? It's exactly what happened to Retro Craze. That is what happened to Retro Craze, in short. Right? Like, heck, I'm sitting here having a dialogue with myself about something I wrote 3 years ago. And I'm critiquing my own ideas and finding, oh, I wouldn't have written that this way today. I wouldn't have said that idea. I reject that. I framed that wrong. But I've grown, I've learned. And so I definitely wouldn't explain these ideas in this way. Most certainly not. Oh gosh, listen to me on this. The presupposition that one can be absolutely certain of any proposition is self-referentially incoherent and is inherently contradictory to its own definition and therefore constitutes as irrationality. Yes. It sounds so brilliant, right? Yes. It sounds so brilliant, except for the fact that the premise of all of it I believe to be incorrect. This is turning out to be quite funny and humiliating, but in the way that I appreciate, right? So additionally, people may maintain opposing presuppositions at the same time and may not recognize the inconsistency within their worldview. This could be true, right? Because of a lack of cogency, a lack of a coherence of ideas. Sometimes people just have like a hodgepodge of ideas, and they haven't really worked out how those ideas relate to one another. This can happen. But oh my gosh, why do I have to be talking about this for? You know, like, see, like I said, I never should have said any of this stuff. I should have just focused on the first few questions. But I'm making an overall point, though, that people think differently, We have clashes on the incongruities between what we think and somebody else thinks, how we handle that, um, you know. But so let's see, how do I want to just skip this part because I'm just saying stuff. You know what's interesting is I think that I this was a letter to myself. Yeah, the first few parts were me giving the timeline with this individual when policies changed, or I should say developed, where certain things changed, like we added in the interest form, we added in the Discord, we updated the expectations for the stream, and then I think for a while I just typed and just thought and contemplated, and I was really wrestling with what I was experiencing. Right, all of the hate I was getting, I was trying to process all of it, and one of the things I do to process emotion is I process thought. Not always, there's a corollary in there, but it's not necessarily a solution. But it did allow me to think through what I was thinking at the time, and I was more influenced by postmodern thought, and it almost shipwrecked my faith. I've come a long way in 3 years in my thinking. People like Michael Knowles helped me a lot think about how the Catholic faith relates to freedom, to liberty, to rights, responsibilities, how Roman Catholic teaching basically is applied to like politics and conservatism, and me just learning more about the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church, learning its doctrines and dogmas and things, learning more about some of the philosophical ideas of Aristotle and how Thomas Aquinas built upon some of those to contextualize or explain certain Catholic teaching with reason and the such. And I've come a long way developing through all of that most of the stuff that I'm saying was completely off, you know what I mean? But I had no idea what I was facing because I didn't understand what was going on. I thought we were just playing video games, and so it took me off kilter. It really did. For the first few days after this, I'm throwing up in the toilet, and I'm like, "What's going on? I don't get it. I'm not being able to process or understand why I'm being treated so poorly, so aggressively, so militantly. It didn't make sense to me, and so over the next 2 weeks, I'm thinking through stuff, and this is kind of like an intellectual journal at this point because I'm just kind of thinking about how to understand their positions and my positions and the conflict and the basis for treating each other with respect. And I've reframed all of this. I've recategorized it since then, but it's yeah, some of these more postmodern thoughts I didn't even recognize were postmodern thoughts because I got them from so-called Christian books during my 10 years at Nazarene Bible College. And these things were seeded prior to me becoming Catholic, and I've been trying to weed out the impact of modern philosophers have had that I have just absorbed by simply living in this culture, and how some of those things were made explicit and even adopted in certain so-called Christian Protestant circles. And so I had a really rough time to get into sports tag. That's funny. Yeah, isn't that nice how I try to make something simple, and how people can to see what somebody else's mind can do to it is quite interesting, to some extent, to see how other minds work at times. But I think in general, my idea is that when untamed raw emotion occurs due to perceived incongruities and worldviews which are not our own, feelings which are not properly grounded by the intellect is what leads to rage, hate, and aggression against other people. See, I can, as I said before, you can reasonably critique ideas while radically loving people. But loving a person means that I love. See, all of these ideas that I keep saying and I keep reinforcing, because just 3 years ago I would be saying this stuff. But to love someone is to will the good of the other. And if something's not objectively good for them, then that's not loving them anymore, right? There's a distinction. There's, you know, love has to be defined. Otherwise, we end up into tautologies where we're just saying love is love. It's like, no, you need to define your term. You can't use a term to define itself. So it's important that we understand that love is to will the good of the other. That's what love is. And then we can have questions about, well, what is objectively good, right? We can have these questions of ethics. So let me see how much I want to. I need to read fast now. I need to just sit and just read the remainder of this. Love is a battlefield. Yeah, there you go. I need to just sit and read the rest of this, because I think it's going to be important. Why are you speaking in philosophical terms? Yeah, I'm asking myself that question now. Understanding the basic components of a worldview will help people understand exactly why retro craze would like to avoid it. Without understanding what a worldview is, one willing not to be able to understand worldview conflict and how to address it. When we encounter a worldview within another that is the same as our own, we experience confirmation and a spirit of camaraderie with this person. When we encounter a worldview within another that is only similar to our own, then we typically respond according to our worldview. We may be open to examining those similarities, and we may be open to learning and integrating those ideas into our own thoughts, adapting the language and concepts of the other worldview. When we encounter a worldview that consists in incompatibilities, then we will experience conflict, especially when those incompatibilities may be diametrically opposed to elements within our own worldview. There is always risk when we open up concerning our worldviews. There are those who have little toleration for worldviews that are different than their own, and often employ intimidation, threats, violence, and discrimination in order to force and coerce a person to adopt their philosophical commitments, which I'll never do. I'll try to reason with a person, but some people go beyond that and say, oh no, just reasoning with a person, that's violence. Words are violence. You're like, no, you're just trying to shut down the conversation. That's all that is. We can have a conversation. And if your position is shown to be irrational, then you need to accept it, that it's irrational. These methods only reveal the deficiency within our own worldviews, and I implore people to be the change they want to see in the world. Lead by example, treat others as you would want to be treated, the golden rule, right? You do not need to beat people. You need to show them a better way. If you do the same things as they do, then you're no better and become the very person you claim to be fighting against. I'm sure this is just a list of quotations from movies. Not everyone is going to evaluate themselves. Not everyone is going to evaluate themselves, their gender, or their identity in the exact same way, according to a certain culture, set of norms, ethics, metaphysics, social constructs, use the same terms, definitions, or concepts. Welcome to the world of intellectual diversity that clearly exists. Why is retro craze discriminatory against certain people? Or not, but that's kind of a question that might be posed. Our position on gaming related elements only is not. Okay. Our position on gaming related elements only is not inherently anti LGBT any more than the same policy is inherently anti free speech for not allowing the AMA tag. I understand that people like to utilize the LGBTQIA plus tag to help people in this community who are often discriminated against feel that the stream with said tag is a safe place for them. And this is a very noble expression of welcoming people of a certain community, and I can appreciate the intent and desire to appear welcoming to a specific community. The non-gaming related material policy was not created with any special agenda to suppress certain people. To the contrary, by avoiding all non-gaming related elements, we also hope to communicate our desire for all to feel safe so that it's a safe place for all and not just for some, without specifically highlighting any characteristics. Because of the non-gaming related material policy, we therefore wish to avoid discriminating anyone and to treat everyone with equal dignity. To use a common listing, discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, philosophy, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, age, disability, marital status, citizenship, national origin, genetic information, or any other characteristic is not permitted by any of its members. To act in such a way is contrary to our focus upon gaming-related content and would be addressed immediately because discrimination in any form will not be tolerated. Gaming itself is already an all-inclusive hobby that is shared by many people. And of course, the language of gender identity or expression, sexual orientation, that language is can't be couched within a Roman Catholic context, but those terms are used to say that if somebody does use that language, they do categorize things that way, that they do think of themselves in a certain way, that the purpose of retro craze was not to critique any of that stuff. That's not the point. So that's why that language is used, because that is the language that is used by others. Right? That should be clear. I don't use that language. I have also observed that the LGBTQIA plus tag can also make some people feel uncomfortable, but not for the reasons you might think. People who may not share the same worldview and values may feel uncomfortable when they see this tag, and it can create an unsafe environment for those who have worldviews that clash with those of others. Not because they are bigots or neo-Nazis or discriminatory, but because any element that clashes with a person's worldview, no matter what the subject matter may be, can create an uncomfortable environment for those who only wish to use Twitch for gaming-related purposes. I have been told by several members of the LGBT community that they also use the tag to deter people of other worldviews from visiting the stream in order to avoid possible worldview clash. So that's people using it specifically to keep, right, to be exclusive. This is true, yeah. As a response to the variety of worldviews that can exist in the minds of our viewers, I created a safe environment where all are welcome by means of the non-gaming related elements policy. The purpose of the policy is to be welcoming to all who wish to only use Twitch for gaming purposes. In relation to the aforementioned, the policy serves to fulfill this objective by avoiding any tags that presently exist or may exist which highlights individuals on the basis of race, color, religion, philosophy, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, age, disability, marital status, citizenship, national origin, genetic information, or any other characteristic, instead on the basis of gaming. Now, of course, this policy would be exactly the same today if Retro Craze was still a team. And I could see myself being attacked because somebody used the male tag or somebody used the Christian tag or somebody used one of the mental illness tags or national origin tags or citizen or marital status tags or whatnot, they all would have gotten the exact same message from me stating what the policy is as it's stated and made public in the Discord at that time, and an explanation by me on how it applies to the specific tag that might be being used. So it's very interesting that Twitch took my advice to either A, get rid of the LGBTQ AI plus tag, or open up tags for all this other stuff. And that's what they ended up doing. So why are you controlling the content of team members? This was a question, right? Every team is different in its purpose and have different criteria which they use to manage their teams for fulfilling that purpose. Some teams focus on being PG related or family friendly, and others are specific to RPGs. In fact, the family friendly tag wouldn't be able to be used. It's a non-gaming related tag. Right? It was just a blanket, no non-gaming stuff. Because family friendly is subjective, right? And that goes against exactly what Twitch at one time said wasn't a legitimate tag. Or others are specific to playing RPGs. Not every team will be a good fit for everyone, which is why I expressed this to this individual. Quote, there might be some other teams out there who don't mind the non-gaming stuff, end quote. Everyone is free to do whatever they wish on their own channel. Not because I give them permission for it. It's their channel on Twitch, right? Follow the terms of service, and beyond that, just I don't give people permission to do whatever they want because I don't have to give permission. People already have the ability to will things. But at the same time, I would say that one is not at liberty to do whatever they want, because not whatever a person wants actually gives credence to their liberty. Because I don't think people have a right to irrationality and to things that are not to their own benefit, at the very least. So, I got to qualify that stuff. But anyways, I said, everyone is also free to explore other team possibilities for the best fit possible if they no longer fit the criteria of their present team. When this person decided to no longer wish to be associated with me or Team Retro Craze, I respected the decision and respected both their privacy and the request that I no longer contact them. And I'm using them and they because I'm obscuring who they are. Because I said, like at the very beginning, no names are being used here. Right? People's reputations should stand on the basis of themselves. Nobody should judge another person based upon common report. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. A person's integrity stands or falls with themselves. I'm not going to speak to any of that. Right? So let me give a fuller example. No one is attacking teams dedicated to PG related content and conversations. No one is offended by the content censoring or infringement upon free speech. Why? Because the PG rule is not inherently anti-free speech nor anti-expression. People who wish to keep their own content PG related are more likely to join a team that fits their purpose. This is not about controlling the content of others, nor does it have anything to do with human rights. Some people do use Twitch for non-gaming purposes, and some even like to draw people to themselves on the basis of their worldview, which I do now. Okay? Every individual person decides the type of stream they wish to create and establish the social dynamic they wish to have. And there are teams out there who share the same approach and don't mind the variety of possible conflicts which can occur as a result. At Retro Craze, we are interested in building a team of people who already have made the same commitments concerning their use of Twitch. This is not to say that gaming is more important than the person. It's that the persons involved wish to focus more on the games than any characteristics they might have. Quote, question, are you not just catering to bigots? Answer, a bigot is a person who is intolerant towards those holding different opinions. You know, I mean, based on that definition, I'm intolerant towards... I tolerate the ability of one's... I tolerate that a person has the ability to direct their intellect in various ways. Yeah, I got a shirt, right? What I don't tolerate, and it depends on what we mean, meaning that if I was confronted with certain ideas, I would reason against them, especially if I find them to be very destructive towards our children. And, you know, if I think people are grooming our children, you know, they're trying to confuse them with adult issues and things like that. Yes, I think it's fair to say that one should be intolerant of those sorts of things. And that is why parents are really pushing back against the kinds of stuff that are being pushed in our schools. You know, they want reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? That's fair. That's fine. You know, they want the kids to just learn about different foods and different clothes and stuff like that, but not the sort of things that people are subjected to today, because it really constitutes it constitutes a religion. The Alphabet Alliance is basically a cult. That's all it is. It has very specific ideas or philosophical commitments concerning the nature of the human person, and is an umbrella term for all kinds of conflicting ideas concerning the same. I am generally intolerant of the kind of confusion and the spiritual damage that it's doing to children, and the kind of how damaging the militant activism is to our culture, all right, in eroding traditional values and norms. I don't like those things, and I will speak out against them. If that's what it means to be intolerant, that is, I guess you could call me a bigot. I don't really care what word you use. I mean, I care that you have a right perception of me. I care that you use the right language and concepts concerning me. All right? What I don't care is that if someone wants to circle the drain and spiral down and have their mind dragged through the mud and become depraved, I'm greatly concerned about that. And love is to will the good of the other. So if I can help a person not do that, I'm going to do that, even if the world calls me a bigot for trying to do it. That is what I mean. So one individual told me that they would be offended. All right, I gotta hurry up here. I still have a lot to read, so I need to just read. Okay, all right. One individual told me that they would be offended if human sexuality was considered a sensitive issue. Like if I said I can't comment, I need to just keep reading. The argument was this, quote, if there weren't bigots in the world, then everyone would accept it, and it wouldn't be a sensitive issue at all. And therefore, since it is due to bigots that have made it into a sensitive subject, we don't feel that it is right to label LGBTQIA plus topics as a sensitive issue because it is catering to a culture or situation that was created by bigots. And by calling LGBTQIA plus a sensitive issue, you're therefore supporting the work of bigots, which is really strange because in general this is part of progressivism, which is to change an attempt to change the norms of the culture. So it's basically the claim is that everybody's always been bigots, and only now, is a truer understanding of human nature is emerging, and everybody who doesn't jump onto the philosophical train is going to be left behind as Neanderthals, as bigots and racists and all of the sort. And really, it's just, I'm a Roman Catholic, so Catholics have always been against slavery, has always been against targeted harassment, and and all of that stuff. So yeah, I need to read, or I'm not gonna. I gotta go to bed. So I appreciate the fact that a person took the time to explain this perspective to me, and I've given it a fair amount of thought. Basically, it's saying this, quote, if there didn't exist any worldview that challenged my own, then there would be no conflicts, end quote. And certainly any and all people holding to any worldview would be able to state the same. How one interprets their personal inclination, this is important because people were saying that I was making comparisons to things, and I'm just talking about ethics in broad strokes here. How one interprets their personal inclinations and ideations, which we experience as human beings, is based upon our worldview, the product of philosophical reasoning in the area of ethics, one of the major branches of philosophy. This is true. It is the incompatibilities between people's philosophical commitments in the area of sexuality that is the source of conflict between people because they interpret this aspect of their nature differently, one from the other, right? How we view the wide range of human experience helps us make sense out of those inclinations which we experience within ourselves and how we come to understand those within others. Some inclinations which a person may experience within themselves are generally categorized by most people as aspects of ourselves to avoid, despite the fact that they are there, such as entertaining homicidal ideations or experiencing sexual desire for an 8-year-old child, right? Now, note, I'm not speaking of a person who acts on these things. I'm talking about people who are experiencing ideations and inclinations that are inconsistent with the way that we should act in relation to ourselves and to others, right? Even with the criteria of 2 consenting adults, some may still categorize a 20-year-old boy being intimate with his 45-year-old mother as something to avoid, but not all. I say most people because there will always exist people who ponder and act upon the thought of killing another human being, and there will always exist adults who feel strong urges towards very young children. The important point is that we all have different criteria for how we assess these issues, and this is directly related to ethics. So basically all I'm saying is here's the broad range of ideations that the human mind is capable of. Here are the wide range of inclinations that are desires that the humans have experienced. And everybody's coming to this pool of experience and saying, not this is okay, this is not okay, nope, not that. We're categorizing, all right? We're categorizing. Everybody does this, right? Because we need to make sense out of how we understand human nature, right? Just because we feel something doesn't mean it's directed towards our natural end, right? Just because we have a thought doesn't mean it's good, right? But me simply saying this part, the divvying up, categorizing, made people attack me. Which I thought was kind of funny, because my whole point is you draw lines too. Now, adherence to the LGBT worldview, and I called it an LGBT worldview here, maintain that a wider range of inclinations and ideations concerning sexuality in humans is not only acceptable but something to be encouraged. Can anybody disagree with that? That's the nature of the thing. That's not even a critique. That's just stating a fact. When it comes to this pool of every possible ideation the human mind can have, what is considered to be acceptable, there's a wider range or broader range that is acceptable to those who are adherent to the rainbow flag. That's true. That's true. It goes beyond the traditional norms. That's true. Right? So I'm not attacking anybody here. I'm just recognizing categorization by how different philosophies categorize these things. That's it. While there are other worldviews with where a lesser range of inclinations and ideations concerning sexuality in humans is considered acceptable. Yeah, it's true. Like I said, we all come to this pool of stuff and we're categorizing. Some people have a wider range, some people have a lesser range. We're just looking at that intellectual diversity again. Right? Obviously, those who accept a wider range are looking at those who accept a smaller range are thinking that they're rigid. Where those who categorize a lesser range is looking at those with a broader range as depraved. I mean, that's because it's an ethical issue. There's could be things that lie beyond the range of acceptability. Right? In either case, there's a range of acceptability and things that are not acceptable. Like if a person, like an adult, finds themselves attracted to younger children, they should not be ostracized. They should not be stigmatized. They should be understood because they're struggling with something. If they start acting on it, well, there's laws to take care of that, and shame on them. But if they simply experience it, they have the thoughts about it sometimes, they experience the attraction, that's something they have to deal with and they have to fight against. You know what I mean? So you have to be compassionate towards people who are carrying a cross that they don't want. They don't want this. They don't want to act out on it. They don't want to have these thoughts. They don't want to have these attractions, which is why I actually didn't really mind. I know that Michael Knowles had I get this. I actually disagreed with Michael Knowles here because I recognize people do in fact struggle with things. If a person suffers from same-sex attraction, for instance, and they don't want that, and they struggle with that, and they have the ideations, they have the inclinations, and they just have to constantly just direct themselves towards the good, the true, and the beautiful, and keep their thoughts and their desires within the context of holiness, and discipline themselves on their wayward desires and thoughts, but I actually didn't mind the language of minor attracted persons to be distinguished from people who act out on it. Sometimes people just use the term pedophilia or pedophile, And a person will instantly think, oh, it's a person who not only has those ideations and inclinations, but they act out on them. But the thing is if a person finds themselves with those attractions, that's different than acting on it. There's a difference between the behavior and simply having the thoughts or experiencing the desire, the inclination, right? Those are two different things. So I'm fine with that kind of language because I like distinctions. I like distinctions. So I think that was important. All right, so, and overall, each of us must wrestle with these deep questions concerning ourselves and be patient with one another as others try to make sense out of their own human journey as well. When a proponent of a worldview that embraces a larger range of these inclinations and ideations encounters a worldview that embraces a smaller range of inclinations and ideations, then conflict can occur. And from what I've been told repeatedly is that, quote, only bigots embrace a smaller range. Well, what if 1,000 years from now, everybody who considers themselves a member of the LGBT community are considered bigots because they're not broad enough? That's what they're doing to people who hold to a more narrow view. Yeah. There's no bottom to the slippery slope. Let's see. So, no, people are just being people when they come to different philosophical conclusions concerning human sexuality. Who would have thought? People are just being people when we come to different conclusions on things, because we're still thinking through all this stuff, aren't we? Interesting enough, it isn't the range of inclinations and ideations that a person deems most appropriate and proper that is problematic. It is people who attack other people for not holding to the same standard for which they have maintained for themselves. Right? Now, when I say attack, I'm not talking about engaging in conversation or critiquing by means of reason. I'm talking about being aggressive and militant and being obnoxious and being uncharitable and just straight up nasty. Right? That's what I'm talking about. When a member of the LGBT community receives hate messages in their chat from people who maintain a smaller range, they are not receiving hate messages because of the smaller range, but because the person does not tolerate worldviews different than their own. I would tweak this to say that a person is simply being uncharitable. The person is not being mean to them because, like, I know people who interpret reality differently than I do, who maintain a broader range of inclinations and ideations concerning themselves, the human sexuality. But I'm not nasty to them. So just because I have drawn different lines doesn't mean de facto, therefore, I'm mean to people who have different lines than me. That's not how that works. And shame on anyone who is actually doing that. When a non-LGBT person accidentally and unintentionally offends a member of the LGBT community and people begin to send hate messages to the non-LGBT person, they do so not because of any explicit differences between philosophical ethics, but because they simply do not tolerate any perception of attack of their own worldview. Overly sensitive. And some go as far as to say even that the mere proposal that worldviews other than our own exist is enough for a person to justify acting hatefully and intolerantly against others. Because for people, this is reality, and everybody else is wrong. Well, don't we all do that? I think that's kind of where I went with it initially in talking about, I mean, we could still get things here and there wrong about certain things as we go. I mean, I used to be a Protestant. I'm now a Catholic. I used to be highly influenced by postmodern thought. Now I'm more Aristotelian in my epistemology and metaphysics. You know, but in general, I have moved closer and closer, and have been influenced more and more by the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church. I've also been told several times that there is zero acceptance among members of the LGBT community of those who maintain an ethic that is not supportive of the LGBT community, which would be any ethic that is not their own, pretty much. I propose that both LGBT and non-LGBT people work together to help build bridges among each other and demonstrate to bigots who exist, both within the LGBT community and those without, a much better way than what we have seen on Twitter. We can have conversations. You know, I've had lengthy conversations with a person who considered themselves transgender, and talked to this person for months, paragraphs upon paragraphs upon paragraphs. We agreed on absolutely nothing. We agreed on nothing. But we still carried out the conversation because I wanted to better understand, get to the root of their most basic philosophical positions that underlie their entire construct. I wanted to understand the whole thing. So we must always show love, mercy, and forgiveness even to those who don't deserve it. Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much I wasn't intending to be on here for 3.5 hours. And I do need to get going in about 15 minutes, so I need to keep reading. But yeah, absolutely. If I can help encourage people, I mean, as always, the intellect is drawn towards the good, the true, and the beautiful. And if I could do something to help lead people to one day, obtain the beatific vision, then we have achieved the end for which we were created. So, I mean, absolutely. Thank you so much. So we must always show love, mercy, and forgiveness even to those who do not deserve it. If we want our perspectives to be attractive to people, then we need to avoid unattractive speech and acts of hate. Right? We could just have reasoned discussions. I think that's fair. Could there be cases when non-gaming tags may be used? This is very possible and will be addressed further among team members. See, this is going back to answering the question of the individual earlier. One proposal is that as long as the non-gaming tag relates directly to the gaming related material, then it may be possible to be used. While Retro Craze is presently predominantly gaming content, we are also open to gaming related content such as tutorial guides of a particular game, video game collections, rare finds, purchases, showcase, game-related hardware stuff, console, controllers, repair, cleaning, reproduction, creation, other retro-inspired content that may not be listed here. Let's discuss it. For instance, a person may use the cooking tag if they want to cook up Pikachu-shaped cookies, or use the art tag while working on a Mario Paint pixel art, which that would be awesome. No, I can. As a partner, I could create a new team. It wouldn't be Retro Craze because I do non-gaming content, so I don't fit in. I mean, I have a lot to be thankful for, because I built my stream based on retro gaming content, but really I've greatly enjoyed the relationships I have created, not based on gaming stuff. And so, have I had the thought of creating a new team in the future? I mean, that possibility always exists, but I really don't know who would want to join the team. Who wants to be associated with me, and on what basis? I think that's the other thing. Like Christian gamers, that might be too broad. Sometimes, Protestants and other gamers can. There's a lot of like rapture theology. There's a lot of Calvinism. There's a lot of stuff that I don't want to be associated with. So, like, even the idea of connecting with other streamers just because they use the term Christian is not even of interest to me either. I'm Catholic. I'm conservative. Um, I mean that's who I am. That's those. That's gonna lead to the kinds of conversations and things that I do. So I really don't know what that kind of team would even consist of, to be honest. But yeah, it's a good question though. Certainly thinking about it, because I think most of the people in my chat are non-Catholic. So, in fact, I don't know if there's a single person who enters into my chat or has. Well, I think there's a Catholic or two, but they don't hang out a lot. Yeah. So it's like it's kind of interesting. Like one of my most longer term viewers is a Mormon. I disagree with many teachings of the Mormon Church, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but I don't really talk about it much. Yeah. But it's certainly a conversation that could be had, but I wouldn't be mean to my viewers just because they have different ideas. Yeah. Just know I'm crafting a very specific environment. Yeah, people just need to. People need to just, think through stuff, and like I said, yeah, I have people who they tolerate my Catholicism. Like most of my viewers are not. And here I'll just read through the rest of these. Like, why did you follow a lot of people with Retro Craze Twitter account? Like, this was a really weird thing. So when I created the Retro Craze Twitter account, I followed a whole bunch of people because I wanted to be able to see retro gaming content. Like, I followed a lot of people I was following already with my personal account, and I wanted to be able to get all of the be able to follow all the members and also the non-members, so that I would be able to like quote good not quote but retweet really good gaming content of members, do highlights, and also highlight really good new world records and stuff like that may be of non-members because it's gaming related. So I followed a bunch of people to get it on my newsfeed, but people got mad at me for doing that. See, this is one of those things where yes, absolutely. God bless. God bless. Thank you so much. Yeah, I get the idea. Yeah. One time a person was talking to me about a Gamers United kind of idea. It was basically retro craze, but they wanted to call it Gamers United, and they wanted to explain it all differently. At some point, they just we were talking about it, and they stopped messaging despite the fact they put a lot of effort into it. All I said is just don't put my name to anything. In fact, when I was talking to the individual and they created a Discord for it, I created a different name because I don't want to mess up what you're doing. These people are crazy. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so my response at the time was I followed many of the people I followed in my personal gaming Twitter account. I cannot speak to anyone who may have received more than one notification, as I only pressed follow once. I was intending to use Twitter as Twitter was designed to be used to connect and network with other gamers. I plan to retweet gaming related tweets made by other gamers that would now appear in my newsfeed because I follow them. So, why are you buying people for hosts? Do you guys remember this question? And this was my explanation at the time. As a Twitch streamer, we build relationships with one another that are mutually beneficial, and we support each other in different ways. During my journey to partner, it was my desire to A, make my intentions known for what I was doing, B, keep people up to date on the progress, which I did. I posted a lot on Twitter about viewership and stuff, the progress of the journey to partner, how close am I meeting my goals. C, communicate the need for assistance for that which I could not accomplish on my own. I needed people to help support me. My channel was not going to grow on its own. I certainly reached out and said, hey, this is what I'm doing. It would be cool if you could help me with it. Right? And also my intention to reciprocate with support. Right? And also state the type of support I would give. It is not uncommon for me and others to donate $10 to a streamer who previously rated with a channel with 300 viewers as a thank you, to share support and to reciprocate kindness, because let's be honest, not everyone can reciprocate with a rate of 300 viewers of their own. I can't do that, right? Because if I don't have 300 viewers, I can't raid them back with 300 viewers. So I'll give them a donation. Hey, thanks. There you go. Have 10 bucks, buy a new Steam game. Because I can reciprocate. I might not be able to reciprocate in kind, but I could still reciprocate. And that's not buying hosts. Even if I make my intentions known that, hey, if you, during my partner push, if you raid me for 70 viewers or more, I'll give you a thank you. I'll give you a thank you. And I can use monetary means if I want. Whatever. To characterize my good intentions in another way is part of the character assassination that is taking place on Twitter when I am asked whether I am buying people or paying for hosts. I was simply telling you, no, I don't agree to the premise, nor do I consent to what is implied, nor do I condone how it is being characterized. What is your overall perspective on recent events? The non-gaming related elements policy was designed specifically to create a tension-free environment where gamers could connect with each other on the basis of gaming without fear of conflicts, and a safe place for anyone and everyone who desires to focusing on gaming-related subjects. The policy for gaming-related elements only had one intent, as stated above, and the misunderstanding of this policy in any other way than its original intent, but rather to end up perceiving that the policy is inherently, explicitly, and purposefully anti-LGBTQI+, could understandably lead anyone to feel offended if this was actually the case, which it wasn't. People were trying, that was the narrative, right? And this isn't me after the fact, like, oh my goodness, they attacked me on Twitter, Oh no, my team of 150 people went down to 5. Like, people are going to do what people are going to do. And I'm certainly not going to, just give in to people. I'm gonna tell you straight up. That this is why I made the team, and that has not changed. I'm going to tell you the same thing over and over and over again, because what my original intent was is what my original intent was, and it's certainly not what everybody was told on Twitter. It's ridiculous what people were doing. They weren't interested in truth. They were just engaged in defamation and letting their passions have their way with them, which unfortunately is kind of part of the problem. The end to which the policy was created and the language used to describe it does not approximate any kind of discrimination towards anyone on the basis of a bunch of characteristics. The sole purpose of the policy is to build relationships on the basis of gaming and should not be misconstrued to mean anything other than its intended meaning and purpose, obviously. If anyone ever feels offended by anyone or anything, I highly recommend engaging this person in dialogue to determine if the offense was intended. It is always important to seek clarification to determine if a view of offense is even warranted. Right? So, yeah, a person has an emotion, which is legitimate, but is it justified? I have been married for over 17 years, and I can tell you that perceived offenses occur all the time, which is why patience, forgiveness, understanding, and communication is vitally important. Please take that to heart. Furthermore, making a public announcement that characterizes the policy in any way other than its intent and meaning has caused severe harm to everyone involved and has created a hostile environment where people are made to feel unsafe. As a result of the post, misinformation began to spread, and assumptions of those who first participated became the conclusions of those joining the conversation. The characters of me and the non-gaming related policy that are being circulated have provoked much hate in those influenced by those perspectives and has negatively impacted everyone of Team Retro Craze who were innocent of all intentional offense and only wished to pursue their gaming without the impact that worldview conflict often have on people, as demonstrated by Twitter in the last few days. To make matters worse, the misrepresentations of my character have prompted others to openly share any negative feelings or thoughts that one may have ever had concerning myself, behavior which I do not recommend doing in regard to any others in the future. Everything I have done and said are now demonized as a result of the inflammatory language and character assassinations, and anything I may say or do will be interpreted in the least charitable way possible. Everything that we have seen on Twitter was done purposely and with full intent by these people. As a result of such a hateful display, I advise members of Retro Craze that may want to consider leaving the team in case they may become a target for hate. I have personally received hate messages on Twitter, Discord, Twitch, and YouTube. People acting maliciously, all in the name of a perceived offense that was not intended in the thing itself, and justifying that hate which they do not wish upon themselves or their own friends. Many people who participated in this hate culture on Twitter I had considered my friends, and it has pained me to see so many friendships end based upon false pretense and misrepresentations, not only involving myself but also others. I recommend everyone who has observed Twitter over the last few days to consider always avoiding non-gaming related topics with your gaming friends. This is twice now on Twitter when I have witnessed the destructive power of hate that is often unleashed in the wake of conflicting worldviews. The retro community in general is an incredibly diverse group of gamers who have come together around a common interest. I have seen groups thrive when they focus on that common interest. I've seen people connecting and greeting one another without any feelings of animosity. People are free to enjoy each other in a hospitable environment without any tension, pretense, or suspicion. I've also seen groups suffer when they accentuate the differences and dive into non-gaming related subjects. People's emotions are raw. We don't look at each other the same way again. We feel uneasy. We unfollow and cease support. And often this does irreparable damage to the perceptions of all involved and builds walls of divisions between us. Concerning my lack of participation in recent events, which I certainly would have recommended of others as well, I did not consent to dialogue due to the terms and conditions established by hate culture. I was listening to each of you, and I did not want to act with haste, which is neither right nor safe. In all things, be slow to anger, slow to speak, and quick to listen. Above all, love one another, and begin to offer understanding and forgiveness for perceived offenses. As a result of these events, there are a lot of friendships that need to be restored, perceptions of each other that need to be refined, and feelings that need to be addressed. Out of respect for all those negatively affected, I have kept my distance from most people on Twitch, but I would like to begin reconnecting with people if and when they are ready. I basically close off with a quotation from the Merchant of Venice. I followed this up with a second response. I don't remember when. But I said, in fact, I think what quotation? I don't have time for that. On June 10th, so on June 10th, which was basically 10 days later, I wrote the following. Retro Craze takes a neutral stance on all non-gaming matters, creating a safe space where everyone can feel welcomed. We are a gaming culture that focuses on gaming matters. We love everyone and want to share our gaming passions as the sole common interest. All game-related tags are available to its members. If people wish to use non-gaming related tags and utilize Twitch for more purposes than game matters only, then there are several other retro-related teams we could recommend. We have reached out to Twitch support concerning our policies, and if Twitch deems any of our policies to be in violation of terms of service, we will comply with Twitch immediately and without hesitation. And the single most validation of Retro Craze is that despite all of the policies, we did nothing wrong, and Twitch never took action against us because we never did anything wrong. I mean, I spoke for 2 hours on Twitch, sharing the Roman Catholic teaching concerning homosexual acts as being inherently disordered. I'm still on Twitch because I'm just teaching about the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church. Right? And if they want to discriminate against me for talking about Catholic theology, that's something that I'm sure they could do, and nobody would care if I got kicked off Twitch for that. You know? So anyways, yeah, I haven't done anything wrong. The team didn't do anything wrong. We firmly apologize, and this is true. All right. We firmly apologize if anyone felt discriminated against in any matter whatsoever. Nobody intended to discriminate against anybody. Everybody was welcome. This person was perfectly welcome. Was perfectly welcome to the team. Just know that it's for gaming only. We are a non-discriminatory, all-inclusive group of people who remain neutral regarding all non-gaming members, all non-gaming matters. Due to recent discussions on Twitter and the effect that it may have had on people's lives, and this is controversial, I'm sure, and I probably wouldn't have done it if I knew more about it. I donated $200 to the Trevor Foundation. All right. I did so because the guy who I reached out to that was also using the tag told me that this foundation specializes in this issue and has a 1-800 suicide hotline. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I would rather people be alive to be able to address their issues. Right. And so, but I've learned more about the foundation, and I'm pretty sure that the money I gave them is being used for other reasons, not just for a 1-800 number. But based on what I was told, I was like, yeah, sure. So somebody's going to be on the other line of that phone call, talking somebody out of harming themselves. Yeah, let's get them over the suicidal issue, right? Let's get them over the suicidal issue and try to address the other issues, because they can't address those issues if they harmed themselves. But it's all harming themselves, which is unfortunately. Yeah, so there's a little confusion there on my part. Somebody even said, "Hey, do you really know what this is?" I'm like, "Yeah, as far as I know, it's to help people who are in psychiatric need, and there's a number they can call." Unfortunately, that there's much more to it. And then I said, during Pride Month, we personally recommend that people who have been opposing our neutral policies to give all your energy and focus into organizations like this. They deserve nothing less from its allies. Now, once again, I don't think Pride Month's a thing. It's not something that is of interest to me. Pride is the most deadly of the vices. And my goal was specifically to deflect here, and based on what I was being told about the Trevor Project, that it was something that, well, I'm not going to rehash it, but it made sense to me that if this is trying to help keep people alive or something, and that's how it was explained to me at the time, I should have studied more. I certainly wouldn't have used some of this language here. Nobody seemed to really took interest in this anyways. My point is that if somebody considered themselves an ally to try to help people, you have to research charities. That if a person considered themselves an ally and they were trying to help people, albeit I think in a misguided way, I still think that people should put their efforts into helping organizations they think that are going to help other people. I think that's probably the best way of framing that. I think it's important that people should spend less time trying to demonize me on Twitter and spend more time actually working towards a goal that is going to help people. Forcing the Retro Craze team to have to involve itself, all right, to have to become a platform for a non-gaming issue certainly wasn't something that I was gonna do. Now, if somebody wanted to do that, they can obviously do that, right? So why don't you go and do that and leave me alone? Though I mean, like I said, this is 3 years ago, so I'm looking at this from in hindsight. There's some ways I would say things differently here. I certainly wouldn't have donated the money knowing what I know now, and I certainly would have added them in the link here. We understand and acknowledge that people are often attacked and marginalized and discriminated against, and it pains us that we have been perceived as doing this to anyone, which I don't think anybody should be attacking anyone. Where's the fun in that? Please understand our deepest and heartfelt apology for any apparent offense that has been felt. Yeah, I don't want anybody to feel bad. Like, why? But, and again, maybe it's something that somebody needs to feel too. I get that. I wouldn't want to be the cause of it. Not through uncharitable means. Only through someone that feels bad because I did something out of charity. Well, I mean, they have to address that with themselves. But if they're perceiving what I did as something that is uncharitable, well, I mean, I can't really help them with that. Anyone and everyone who shares our vision for a retro team based in both inclusivity and neutrality are free to join Retro Craze. Anyone from any walk of life are free to share our gaming passions as our sole interest. If this is your mission as well, then we might be the team for you. All our policies have been and always will be our aim towards creating a culture where anyone and everyone can connect concerning games regardless of who they are, and to maintain an environment that aims towards the broadest audience possible. So that's true. Any discrimination against any member for any reason or subject to targeted harassment for any non-gaming related matter will be banned, blocked, and reported. All people, including members of the LGBTQAI plus community, people who consider themselves as part of that, should feel safe on the team. They should. If a person only feels safe because it's, if a person only feels safe in a classroom where there's a pride flag on the wall, I think there's a problem. People should be able to go into a classroom and have discussions about stuff. This does not mean that no discussions could ever occur in relation to non-gaming subjects, but it does mean that we would avoid topics that are not aimed at the broadest audience possible, and there are controversial guidelines in place to help us in this regard. We firmly believe that neutrality is only truly achieved when we take a neutral position on all non-gaming matters. This not only aims at the broadest audience possible, but also ensures that we do not promote, support, nor discriminate or discourage anyone concerning non-gaming matters. We do hope that in the days to come that our policies are understood to serve a goal of both inclusivity and neutrality, and that we could build better relationships with those who would prefer to be on other teams and use Twitch for more than gaming purposes. So I certainly think that due to some of the, and I'll state here that I'll state that I edited some things out that weren't relevant. I don't care what people say about that, but I do think that the removing some of the things I don't want to encourage people in, I think is kind of part of my responsibility, like removing stuff. Let's see. Yeah, just comment there that there's an edit. Yeah, like most of the stuff is not necessary here. yeah, removing the stuff about like what is a worldview. I don't want people to be influenced by those ideas because they might not be understood. I think it's best to do an edit there. Live edit. I think there might be more that needs to be. I'm not editing the important parts. Just the stuff that is relevant. To the way I should not have worded some things. Yeah, then also the questions here. Question 7 through. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. I just don't want people to be influenced by some of the postmodern stuff. Yes, the Ministry of Truth. No, I mean, I read aloud what was on it. People have claimed that I've done editing before, and it's not true. In fact, I actually added the word edit in brackets in the places where I did. Mainly has to do, like, I removed the Trevor Foundation comment, I know better now, and I removed the worldview questions that aren't directly related to the team, really. It's just my own musings at the time, which I disagree with now. So, yeah, so here's the quotation from the Merchant of Venice. Are we not people? Hath not people eyes? Hath not a person hands, organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions, fed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same diseases, healed by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same winter and summer as anyone else? If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? That was that's the one you if you prick me, do I not bleed? Yeah. Okay. I'm done for the night. Have a good night, everyone.